Testing. Ryan, can you hear us? Okay. Thank you.
Yep, I can.
You ready? Okay, well, welcome back. We are now in our special board meeting, public meeting. And our next item on the agenda is board action item. You want to go ahead? Go ahead. Right.
I make a motion to uphold the level 3 grievance presented during the executive session.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor of upholding the superintendent's decision on the level 3 grievance as presented in executive session, please say aye.
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 Motion carries a 5-0 vote. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have public comment today?
We did not receive any.
And moving into our work session, we have reorganizing meeting agendas for running an efficient meeting. So what you will see on your board package, page number 3, is one, just kind of discussing the effectiveness of our lengthy meetings and talking about a few ways to run more efficient meetings. And as you will see here, we have 3 items here. And I also invited Janet, since she will be presenting in the monitor session. So if we have questions, she is here for that part. Okay. So as you know, in the last few months, if not, I don't know how long, our time in these meetings are increasing. And I don't know, I think time is valuable. Time the district puts into these meetings, as well as our time, as well as our admin or any of our staff who is here. And so really having a discussion around what can we do different in moving forward. And so we have here some sample agendas that I think you all received. And so just having some discussion around how you feel our meetings are running. Any thoughts?
Well, I think we need to put like a time schedule for each agenda. And if it's not met during that time frame, we move forward
We move on.
and move on instead of just dragging it on extensively.
Other thoughts?
So do you mean, like saying, this meeting agenda, for example, this meeting will last 60 minutes or 120 minutes? And then if each item isn't complete, you just say, we're done, or what do you mean by that?
So let's say, for instance, we have on the agenda to discuss about the dress code policy. And we give that 30 minutes or 15 minutes. If that topic isn't resolved within that time frame, 30 minutes, then we just need to proceed forward instead of prolonging it.
So in other words, somebody can make a motion. If there's a second and a vote, then that's the response. If it dies, then you just continue to move forward.
Right.
is what it would look like.
Well, what's happened in the past is that even at one particular meeting, if there wasn't, can you hear me, Ryan? Okay. If there wasn't enough preferred activity on the topic, it was tabled to another meeting and then maybe another meeting. So I think that in order to get the,
Topic.
well, conversation or thoughts of each person, you would have to allow enough time for each person to bring up their questions or their concerns.
And it does make sense. I don't recall in the past tabling topics or agenda items often. But if that does happen, I can see why and how that would happen. But I think when you come a second time to discuss it and we're discussing the same thing,
Mhm.
one, somebody didn't come prepared, somebody didn't do their homework, and here we are again in the same position. So I think adding to this as well is coming prepared to discuss. If you have questions and those questions can be answered in advance, I think that is also helpful. So doing as much of the prep work as possible is also, I think, beneficial individually and I think as a whole when we come back to discuss.
So
Do you have thoughts, Ryan?
I agree with all points made. Having a set time for each agenda item is great, and like board chair said, be more prepared. Addressing some of these questions outside of these meetings will all help expedite the process. Good recommendations.
So I think we've all had a chance to share. And I'll turn it over to Janet.
yeah, thank you so much. So I think what you all are talking about is how to run your meetings more effectively, right? Because you're all very busy. And oftentimes, and what you were saying, Courtney, is limit or extending debate of discussion is what I heard, which is sometimes utilized. That is part of parliamentary procedure, which is essentially just a tool that the board can adopt to help them have more effective meetings. I'm happy to share those resources. We even have a booklet. We even have webinars that you can watch, but really, and I've seen other boards implement this successfully where they limit the extended debate and also, if needed during discussion, making sure everybody gets a chance to discuss before moving on when there is a motion at the table and having even a limit on that. So like 2 minutes for Courtney, 2 minutes for Rosie, 2 minutes for, you can kind of do that as well. And then decide if whether or not you do have to postpone, which is different than tabling. So it is really important to understand those kinds of differences. And it would be, if it is helpful, to just kind of go through the essential motions and having just a review of that to see if those kinds of tools and practices can help make sure that you're using your time as efficiently as possible. Any questions about that? And then regarding what you were saying, Noemi, about preparing, I mean, you all have done those operating agreements and I think have agreed. And I can't remember if you added it or not, but sometimes that's included in there too, like making sure that you come prepared, that the agendas are received in advance, the packets are received in advance so that the board does have enough time to kind of look through. And if there are questions, asking Juan, right, instead of waiting until, well, hold on, let me step back here. Because you do want to make sure that whatever you discuss is in public meeting. So it is appropriate to bring those things. It's more so if it's a surprise and it's not something that's on the agenda. To bring those up, sooner and not at the meeting.
So it sounds like the time came up. Is that something that we want to practice?
Well, I guess my question is, what elements brought us to this point? Like, I know, obviously, we're here because the meetings appear, I mean, they seem to be running longer. So what elements do you think, is it because we're a newer board? We're less prepared? I mean, what would be the mitigating factors so we have an understanding to maybe work on that and, you know?
Well, I think one of them is coming prepared and asking questions. So that would be, as Janet mentioned, if you have questions about something, that you can ask those in advance. And there are times, of course, when you have questions and it's appropriate to ask those questions. But I think also there are times that you can have those questions answered before the meeting. And I think also on my end, probably practicing where, and implementing where, maybe everybody shares once, maybe twice. And then if we need a vote, we vote and move on.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we like to discuss.
But I think, Santiago, if I can rephrase what you were saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to say is, are we having too many meetings? Like, what started this, right? And is it unique to be in this situation where you're feeling overwhelmed and like there's just a lot of meetings? You're not alone in that. I would say, it's just understanding, when you need those special meetings, when you need your work sessions and how it's, I tell boards, and it happens all the time, where work sessions will get tacked on to like a public meeting or tacked on to an executive session. And as much as possible, I would advise that your work sessions, when you are going to do a deep dive, be just a standalone special meeting and not tacked on, so that you can really focus and be committed to that, whatever it is, topic that you're going to be discussing as a work session. But again, right, it depends, but that is my biggest recommendation. And it may seem like then, but then we have to separate and have the regular board business, a work session, and then potentially whatever special meetings. But it really, even though it may feel like a lot, it might mitigate some of that feeling like, oh my gosh, it's 5 hours in one night versus, oh, we're gonna have 2 this day and 2 this day. Does that make sense? And that sometimes happens, in my experience working with boards for 4 years. It's something that does occur until you have that conversation of like, okay, so how many work sessions should we build? And typically that conversation happens in the July organizational meeting, where the board decides when their regular board business meetings are going to happen and when their special meetings or work sessions are going to happen.
I don't think that's it.
Okay.
So I think that it has more to do with the last meeting that we had.
Mhm.
We talked about the dress code.
Mhm.
And it was discussed, and we talked about it for an hour.
Mhm.
And when it was time to go, I said, was this the longest meeting we've ever had? And when we were getting ready to leave, and everybody jokingly said, yep, this is our record breaker. This is the longest we've ever been here. And I don't know, maybe it was like 10 o'clock.
We've had later meetings, I mean, in the past.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
we've had 2 that were pretty long.
Yeah.
But we do have, Ryan and I are new.
Mhm.
And so we are, we're both watching a lot of the webinars.
Yeah.
He went to the summer conference. I just got back from Portland.
Mhm.
So, we are learning from others. And so, we're learning as we go. We're catching up
Absolutely.
and stuff. And apparently long meetings are discouraged. And,
Mm.
we did talk about the dress code for an hour.
Gotcha.
It went quite a while. We went back and forth,
Mhm.
and I think that it was presumed that some understandings that had previously been agreed on were completely off the table. And so we were kind of rebuilding the home again.
Gotcha.
And so I think that that now we're here and we're talking about maybe we need to agree on maybe a more solid approach to keep the meetings constructed.
Gotcha.
And you know, like you said, you know, a couple minutes
yeah.
here, a couple minutes
Yep.
there, discussion, vote.
Yes, yes. Yep.
I think that's what happened.
I mean,
Okay.
it has slowly been increasing in time since like
Mhm.
very early spring. And so it just seems like
Gotcha.
minutes are being added to regardless what topic, but it just continues.
So then I think definitely then those remembering that you can limit the discussion of debate, you can postpone, like in that instance, probably would have been good to maybe postpone and then continue it for different, like to continue the conversation.
That's the one that had already been tabled 3 times.
Oh, but it already have been tabled 3 times. Okay.
Yeah.
So then that's why there needs to
And so,
be,
and with that is, it's the same, either same opinions or same responses at
Mhm.
3 of those things. And so that's when I go back to when we come unprepared and we're presenting the same thing, I think that shows how either prepared or unprepared we are. And so when we table items or agenda items, like what's the purpose of that? And if we are going to postpone or table something, then we need to be accountable so that when we do return, like
Mhm.
we're coming back with either new information or we're moving on.
yep. Okay. Got it. Yep. Being very clear on, yeah, why you're tabling it and what's going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also the limit of like, if it has to be 1 minute or 2 minute, right? But at least everybody gets the chance to discuss whatever topic is go on for debate. And then open it up for, yep, if there's any second motions and whatnot.
Okay.
Can I add something real quick? I think our discussions are only a portion of these meetings. We also have a lot of agenda items and presentations from admin and school and principals and so maybe we also need to think about limiting some of the agenda items as well because our discussions that's only a portion of the meeting and I think a lot half of the meeting or if not more is presentations from administration so which are super important and really interesting but maybe we need to limit some of those or space those out a little bit more. Just an idea.
Thank you. And I think adding to that is the discussion also happens when our staff presents. And so really thinking about what discussion looks like in each of those agenda items, not just when we discuss and ready to vote.
Yeah. And Ryan, I appreciate you saying that because tonight there's a monitoring session, right? And that's the whole intent of that is to replace some of those reports. Because you shouldn't have to be now repeating that again at your regular board business and you're more streamlining how it's aligned to what the board needs to be receiving to stay informed in your governance role, right? So that's a really good point. And something that I also do see quite often is there's a lot of reports and it's important to make sure that those reports are tied to, what is that information that the board needs to receive to be able to stay informed and then tied to their role of making policies and looking at the budget.
Okay, so it sounds like moving forward, we'll consider time limit on some of these agenda items and considering our discussion time as we individually share and then collectively have discussion. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Anything else? I will make note of that. Okay. And then the last bullet point on here is distinguishing between requesting information versus future agenda items. So on our packet, we normally have that agenda item as future agenda items. And so really talking about what's the difference between each of these. And as we request information or reports, really thinking about what we're requesting and where does it fall under. So for example, if you have an interest about, I don't have an example right now. Is that something that you can email Superintendent Larios about and receive a response?
Attendance, for instance.
Right. Or do we need a report on that topic? So it's really one, I think when we get to that agenda item is deciding if that is requesting information, or is that, are we requesting a report on that?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you for bringing this up because this is something that I really need help on, kind of understanding the difference and the nuance about what is appropriate. And so, for example, I think on the last time we met, I asked for I'd like to get more information about our Woodburn School District's carbon footprint and things that we could do to maybe reduce that. And so I just don't know. I'm not understanding. Is that just something I'm at? Is that a private conversation with Juan and I, or is that I'm not understanding the platform or the arena where that needs to be discussed. So thank you for this agenda for this item because this is something that really pertains to me and I need clarity on. So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. So yes, so when you have an interest on a topic and, we get to the future agenda items, I think you can, depending on the information you're requesting, we can decide as a board, is this something that needs to be presented at a future meeting, or is this something that will satisfy via email? So that's something that could be decided when we get to those points. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I guess I just don't know how to determine which way to go.
Oh, I see. Any suggestions, Janet?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. I mean, you don't want to ask a lot, and sometimes it depends on what Juan can establish, kind of like, hey, yeah, like if you have a question or check in with me, I think that's appropriate. And then if it is something that needs to be on an agenda item or there needs to be a report created that has, you have policy on that too, that has like a monetary value, like it's going to cost time. And by time, I don't just mean like, it also time of staff, right? That's also going to cost. So, those kinds of things do have to be approved by the board. But if it's just more like you want to just share something, bounce ideas or something like that, I mean, I'm going to ask Juan to interject here and kind of what is what are his expectations for that? And I know we had some conversations already about that during the operating agreements. And so going back to that, because I believe you all did discuss this already kind of at length. So that would be my other recommendation is let's pull up that operating agreement and have a conversation if it's needed to be discussed further.
And the way I think about it a little bit is that if there's a question, I'm always open to responding to questions. And if there is a question that a board member has and they send that, I'll respond and share that information with the entire board. And we have a practice of sending out like a board memo or a board bulletin that we send out during non-board meeting weeks to provide responses to those questions to the entirety of the board. And so I see that as like one-way communication. If there's questions that require just a one-way response, like let's have that in an email or in another way rather than to do it in a board meeting that requires time and when it can just be a response. But if it's going to be a conversation, then that's probably more appropriate for a board meeting if we're going to have a discussion about something. But then that would be something I think in that agenda item, I might recommend that the board decide as a board, like is the majority of the board interested in having a discussion on this topic so that we could decide to prepare accordingly.
That helps. Thank you.
Great. Any other final discussions? Otherwise, we can move forward. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I think this gives us an idea of how to move forward and making our meetings a bit more effective. And so moving on to our next item is the monitoring session. And we have here Janet from OSBA, who will be walking me through this. So this is a first process for me, and I think as a board, and likely for everybody who is here, who will be presenting. And so thank you for being here. I ask for grace as we walk through this process, and I will reciprocate that grace unto you as well. So I will turn it over to Janet.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I know we're just getting those up there. I'll give Jenny a moment so she can share that. And then, yeah, presentation mode. Thank you, Jenny. All right, great. So, yeah, as Noemi, board chair just kind of mentioned, I also want to just, before opening it up to the presentation from, the superintendent and his staff, I wanted to start by just, kind of letting you all know what my role is tonight as your facilitator from Oregon School Boards Association. So I'm a board development specialist. I work with boards and help them with their professional development growth and training and their leadership skills. And so tonight I'm just here to facilitate and kind of let you know. And Jenny, you have the questions, right? We'll get there to a moment, but yeah, no worries. And so I just wanted to let you know kind of what my role is. And then if you can flip the next slide, Jenny, thank you. So just as Noemi said, you know, this is something new. And so I also want to emphasize how we're all together going to be collaborating, learning together. This process is not set in stone. We can change it. We can evolve it. But this is a really good opportunity for the board to just ensure that the district goals are being met. That's pretty much it. And I'll explain that here in a moment. But before I do that, I just thought it'd be good to have some group guidelines that if you all are willing and able to commit to these are my suggestions is to one, stay engaged tonight. Listen to understand. So meaning, you know, listen with an open mind and really listen to as the presentation from the staff, the board, when they ask questions, et cetera. Be respectful, speak your truth responsibly. This is the opportunity. Yes, we are in a public meeting, but it is important for the board to hear what gaps are happening in when it regards to meeting those district goals. I'm just giving you some examples of what these agreements will look like. And then agree to disagree respectfully. This is something that I tell boards. I know this board has heard it from me a few times. You know, it's okay. We all have different perspectives, lived experiences, and that's why it's important to come together and collaborate as a board, the superintendent, the community, staff. And so it is important to just, you know, it's okay if we don't all agree, but we can do it with mutual respect. So these are the group guidelines. If I can get just a thumbs up that these are guidelines that you will adopt for today's work session, that would be fantastic. And if not, we can have a conversation and change them because again, this is what I propose. Awesome. Just a thumbs up. Great, great. Perfect. So you might be wondering, why does she have a slide up here of the pilot? This is like a pilot cockpit. So the role of the board, and I'm going to share this just so we all, again, are on the same understanding of what we're doing tonight. So the role of the board is really to set the vision for the district. Where do they see their students after they graduate? What do they want? How do they define student success here at Woodburn School District, right? That's their oversight role to set the direction. So I wanted to just give you kind of an example of that to put it in a little bit more simple kind of terms. You know, when you get on a plane, when you buy a ticket, you buy that ticket, right? And you expect that the pilot is going to get you to that destination safely, right? I don't know about you, but I don't go to the pilot when I jump on the plane and say, hey, did you check the engines? Did you do this? Did you do that? Because you are trusting when you buy that ticket, right? And you trust that that pilot is going to get you safely, you know, as much as possible to that destination. And that's essentially what you as a board are doing too. You are setting the vision, the destination of where you want your students to be when they graduate. And so tonight, the pilot, which would be, if we're putting it into perspective with this scenario, would be Juan, right? So he's going to take that direction and with his staff figure out how to meet students' needs. And so we're going to be looking at, if you can change the next slide and the next one. Again, we're here about students, right? That's the focus that we all are here for, is to ensure that your students are successful. So you already have set that direction, which are these goals. I saw them at the front of the building, which is fantastic, and in 3 different languages, which was amazing. So I did want to call that out as I was waiting. I saw that. So these are the three goals. This is essentially, and then on the side, kind of the direction that the board has set for Juan and his team to meet those goals. So as part of the strategic planning process, next slide, please. Thank you. And one more. The role of the board, oh, no, keep going. The role of the board is that monitoring. So that's why we're here tonight and calling it a monitoring session, because the board needs to ensure that those district goals that we just saw are being met. And so that's the role of the board. Next slide. And to do that, the board, together with Juan, with the superintendent, decided kind of on what data, what information is needed to measure the district goal. Juan, with his team, how that data can be collected, and when can that data be available and presented to the board, which is what we're here for tonight, to have that presentation from the superintendent and the staff and key staff. These are the ones that before I hand it off, these are the goals that are going to be looked at, but more particularly the board, you decided that these were the priority objectives under those goals to focus on, because we're not going to be looking at every single objective that was listed in that big, that strategic plan process. You saw tons of bullets under each goal. So that's why you're going to be diving into specific priority objectives. And then you see as well, the monitoring, these are going to be received quarterly. So tonight, November 12th, you'll receive another update on February 11th and then June 10th. Next. And then again, this is the other goal that you're going to dive deep into, and these are the priority objectives. And similar, again, the plan is to have an update on November 12th, February 11th, and June 10th. Next. And so again, the role is for the board to, next, to stay informed in that oversight. So as they're receiving the data, making sure that they are making connections and ensuring that, that the district goals are being met, right? And how, and receiving the data that they think will measure that. So again, the role tonight for the board is to look at high-level data, which they're going to be looking at here in a moment, so that they can stay informed on the district goal progress and to be focused on the vision and mission that they have set for their students here at Woodburn, and then be able to make those connections and alignment to when, so using kind of whatever is presented so that they can then make informed decisions on policies and on the budget. So before I hand it off to Juan for the presentation, there are some questions, some board data reflecting questions. Jenny can have, right here. So you should all have in front of you 8 questions. And so these are what I would call guidance questions for you all. You don't have to answer all of them, but as Juan and his team are presenting, board, please fill out as much as possible. Again, kind of some of these questions to help you ensure, these are questions that are going to help you ensure that the district goals are being met. I really want you to focus on that second line. I put a blurb there of the board data reflection questions. The board should focus on whether the data shows measurable progress on district goals and aligns with their vision for students. That's it. That is the nut. That is the nut and bolts of your oversight level of your accountability, right? Because you're doing this so that you hold the system accountable, that things are moving along and that progress is being made so that your students are successful. We're all here for students. I know that. And so that's what I want you to remember as you're listening to the data. And again, remembering those guidelines that I opened up with. So just for example, emerging trends, what are you hearing in the data against grade levels? I know you're going to be looking at elementary, middle, and high school levels. And so kind of looking at, population groups and whatnot. So these are, again, your guidance. I would encourage you to fill this out as you're listening and using these. And then we will have time for you to reflect on those questions after each goal. And with that, I just wanted to lay some groundwork. At the end, we'll have some conversation of how can you now share this progress out in the community, et cetera. So we'll end with that at the end of tonight. But I'm going to now hand it off to Juan to give an update on those goals.
Thanks, Janet, for that introduction. And I also want to thank the board chair Legaspi for recognizing and asking for that grace. And I've been an administrator, I think now from Woodburn, 16, 17, 18 years or so. And I've been to lots of board meetings, and this is the process that is brand new to us. We've not engaged in this level of board monitoring. The board has monitored goals for many, many years, and it's been done through the school reports. And so the school reports have presented the data on the goals that the board has established as priorities. And so that monitoring has happened and through the school reports, but it hasn't happened on this grand of scale, looking at all this in one night. And so I want to applaud the administrators and the staff who worked to prepare the information. A lot of the report and the questions, the data, it's not that readily available. And it takes a lot of compilation to be able to produce and make available. So as we walk through these goals, again, I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace as well for ourselves, as this is our first time producing this and working with to provide this for the board. And so I think we'll learn a lot from tonight and help us prepare for our next monitoring session in January and have maybe some of those additional questions responded to. But you might hear some of that tonight where well, thank you for that question, and we'll have to provide some of that at the next monitoring meeting. And then maybe for us to think about a little bit as we think about the use of our time is if this monitoring session is intended to replace something, then maybe we should think about like, what is it replacing? So the board can continue to focus on that earlier agenda item about the efficient use of time. So I'll invite up our panelists. Will be joining us. We walk through these 5 goals tonight. So we'll be sharing 5 goals. And again, this comes from the board's professional development plan. The goal around understanding and analyzing the use of data and receiving regular updates involving stakeholders. So we have our stakeholders who are tonight are level administrators, and we'll be walking through not building level data. This will be level data. I'm sorry, not building specific data. This will be level data. And some of what you heard tonight is what you've heard is going to be really connected to what you heard at previous department reports. Like, for example, our first goal that we're going to be diving into is around 3rd grade reading. And the 3rd grade reading, we heard at the teaching and learning report about the focus happening for early literacy, and the intense work happening with that multi-tier system of support team to build the core review process and examine the structures of literacy happening in our building with the new Lectura curriculum. So you're going to hear connections. You're going to hear connections to what we heard at the attendance report with Director Kuhl and sharing the attendance plan as we share out those reports. So you'll hear the connectivity between what you've heard from departments presenting about, here's the work that we're leading as a district. Now here's the data that we have available at this point in time and how we are making data-driven decisions to decide what to do next and to move that needle on each of those goals for the next session in January.
So before you all start, I just have a comment to say. In case, we're curious about numbers, right? And so we know what the numbers are. And I think for me, if there is any stress around numbers, for me, it's okay. Like, it's about moving forward. What are we doing different? What's our plan? And not so much what the numbers look like now. So that's something that I wanted to share with you all.
Appreciate that. So the first goal that we're looking at tonight under the each student will demonstrate proficiency in all academic areas. The priority goal that's been set there is that 19% of our students will be on grade level reading by the end of this year. And so we'll be diving into what that looks like right now at this point in time based on the assessment, the MAP assessment, measure of academic progress after the first testing window, and sharing here's where we're at now, where we're projecting to be, and how we're working to make decisions on what to do next. Okay.
Is this the first slide that we're
Okay. Thank you. Nice. So as stated, our goal is to be at 90% of our students reading on grade level as measured by the state assessment, which is done in English. I'll preface that, which is an English assessment. And many of our students, our dual language students, are learning in it primarily at their in the early literacy grade levels in a language other than English. So last year we finished at 9% of our students being on grade level. And right now we're projecting to be at 13%, not quite at our goal of 19%, but this is after the first testing window using the measure of MAP, measure of academic progress. So we have our elementary administrators, Alfredo Bellinger and Cheryl Rawson, Ibarra, who will be sharing a little bit about the high leverage strategies that are being implemented to move forward from where we are and continue to make progress towards that goal.
Hello, here you go. Well, good evening, board members, Ms. Larios. My name is Alfredo Bellinger, and I'm the principal at Washington Elementary. And I have the privilege to represent my colleagues today, and I guess I'll go ahead and start with our reading goal. So these are some examples of some of the high leverage strategies that we are doing to address the 19% goal that we have for this year. Before I start with this, I gotta make sure that you guys understand that that 9% that we received last year is for English only assessments. And a lot of, our classrooms right now are, bilingual classrooms, where instruction in Spanish in English doesn't occur until you get into 4th grade. So one of the things that we are all, doing, and it's very exciting. I mean, this is probably one of the most exciting, critical and exciting goals in readings is this work around the science of reading. And 2 elementary schools last year kind of embarked in this new learning on how students approach instruction in the classrooms around reading. The 2 other schools are doing that work, this year. And this has been a big shift in the way that we used to teach reading. I think our previous approach was more of a whole language approach. This one is dividing instruction into like word reading and comprehension. And it's addressing some of the things a lot of the school districts around the nation were struggling with, and that is the instruction around phonological awareness and phonics. So since we've been doing this work for the last 2 years, we have, I think, partnered up with the Oregon RTI project, which they had come over and give us a lot of these trainings, and teachers are becoming quite proficient on all the different components of reading with this new approach. So, like I said, one of the main things about this new approach is the components that come on the foundational skills. I think our students were lacking in the past. The second bullet over there, so K1 educational assistance support. I think a lot of our, I think one of the things that we target as a priority was to support literacy at the earliest levels and build a strong foundation. So I believe all elementary schools were providing, outside of the number cap, instructional assistants in the classrooms that are able to provide additional instruction in reading and be able to differentiate and provide interventions in a small group. So our numbers in kindergarten and 1st grade are actually pretty exciting. I think I was looking, and I can speak only for my school, they were around 45 to 50% of the students were actually on grade level in Spanish, of course, with the new reading program that we're using right now. And so those support that we have from assistant is crucial, because it's allowed the teacher to cut up students that maybe are falling behind in their foundational skills. We also have an early literacy interventions, with reading specialists. Every school has a full-time reading specialist, and they're also in charge of providing the much needed, tier 3 instructional support. They run small groups and help us, identify sometimes if students, need that very specialized type of instruction, maybe around things like dyslexia, or to determine if a student might have a disability and they need to go in a different route. For K1 parenting literacy nights, That is also like, another part about this work that's very exciting. We are helping our families learn about how to support the children and students at home. So for K1, we have this Estrellita literacy, nights that are happening 3 times a year. And we have, a staff member from the district that's actually doing all of them and offering these great strategies and materials that families can take home to help us, build that partnership and support literacy at the homes. District literacy teams focus on essential components. So one thing that we're doing this year too that is also super exciting, in my opinion, is building a district level Oregon RTI MTSS team that has reading as a priority. So with this partnership that we have with Oregon RTI, we're able to build this framework on literacy where we're trying to find alignment within classrooms. And we adopted officially, I think, 2 years, a new reading curriculum, which is called Benchmark. It's really good curriculum. It has all the components, that are required by science reading. But it takes, a lot of time, for teachers, to implement that and to change, in a way, the way that we used to do business. I think, the old reading approach is something that maybe was in the district for 12 years. So changing those old habits is going to take some time. And with this partnership that we have in building these MTSS supports, we're making sure that we have instruction at all different levels, at the core instruction in the classrooms, and that we also have, interventions for students, that need it. With all of that, we have implemented a lot of measures around assessment and be able to identify where the students are at. And we're working on finding, fine-tuning the assessments, that it will let us know exactly what students need so that we can, intervene early rather than later. And for the last bullet I have there is, grade level teams are developing and implementing language bridging lessons. So that is some really exciting work coming from the district, from Creasy and company. We have this year 4th and 5th grader teachers that are developing these lessons, that are helping students see similarities between Spanish and English so that they can, and Russian, sorry, so that they can bridge their literacy skills and they can transition, from one language to the other. And that work right now is happening at 4th and 5th, but I think next year is probably going to go down to 2nd and 3rd, which will help us probably see an increment on that percentage of students that are actually meeting. I think they're all doing it, K5, but I think they're targeting some of those grade levels right now, and that's going to be, keep shifting to 2, 3rd, and then kinder to 1st grade. So I think that's how we're responding to the reading goal. And one thing that is also mentioned, I think it's worth mentioning too, that we use this is a quarterly screening assessment that it projects how students are going to be doing in the Oregon State Assessment. And for Spanish, I just looked it up, for all the schools with the fall assessments, we are at 18% in 3rd grade. But that is just for the Spanish reading, not English.
And this is a pretty significant shift, moving into utilizing the science of reading. And so, the first impact is changing the adult behaviors before we start to see then the outcomes for students. And so one of the pieces that Mr. Bellinger commented on about those standards of practices, that's work that's being done with educators. It's not being done in a top-down approach. It's working collaboratively with educators. We recognize if we want to build efficacy, if we want to impact our culture and improve conditions, we have to work with our educators. And so that's work that's happening with educators to establish what the standards of practice are, to have a real clear vision for what is instruction and literacy look like, what are the required components, and have that clarity so that it connects to our instructional framework. It connects back to the support, feedback, evaluation that educators are getting. And it really takes the guesswork away from what does literacy instruction look like in Woodburn, producing that real clear picture with the standards of practice framework rubric for every grade level, to have a real clear picture as we implement this new curriculum and this new approach to teaching literacy. So it's exciting work, and we see the first impact on the educators And then knowing that it takes work and takes time then to see the outcome for kids. We have to be consistent with it and support it before that growth is going to happen for kids.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Larios. That's the thing also I forgot to say, like, so with these standards of practice, something I think all elementary schools are going to be doing, maybe at different times, because some of them are like 2 years, behind this work, is going into each other's classrooms and giving like, peer feedback. And I think that's going to be like such a powerful tool, because it's not a top-down directive, but it's from peer to peer. So this is like, teachers coaching each other, like, to establish those high leverage strategies in reading instruction.
So all these bullet points here, this is new practices as of this year, or is this continuous practices from previous?
Some of them I think are continuing from last year, but some of them are definitely like new, like, the science and reading work and the standards of practice. I think that's all kind of like, developments as we go. The work with MTSS work in Oregon RTI is like ongoing. The literacy nights, I think there was a start like, last year. We continue to do that this year.
This year is also going to be the first year that they have the literacy nights in all 3 languages.
Thank you. That was my quick question. You can
Oh.
continue.
So yeah, I really think, that we're actually going to be making gains, this year. I mean, it's like, I have full faith.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Kathleen, like that. So this next goal that we're looking at, the first one was specific to 3rd grade, and so we heard only from the elementary team expanding on the work being done. This next goal related to social emotional learning is something that crosses all levels, elementary, middle, and high. So as we walk through this goal, maybe we could think about the questions we have, and we can wait until every level has that opportunity to share and talk about the work that's happening. And then we could just have the one question session at the end after each level has had an opportunity to expand on their work. So our goal here is to improve the students who are by 3% who are in the needs category on the DESA, as identified through the DESA. And the DESA is an assessment that we utilize here to measure the 8 domains of social emotional wellness of students. It measures the self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, decision-making, goal-directed behavior, optimistic thinking, and personal responsibility. At the elementary level, this is done by a screener that's done by the educators. At the secondary level, there's the educator screener, but there's also then the self-screener where students are contributing and providing that feedback based on their own personal evaluation of their growth and their social and emotional development. So, is that correct? Oh, that's good. That's correct. When it says this spring, that's spring of last year, we're at 21% of our students were being identified as in need of instruction. After the first round of screening this year in the in the fall, we were at 13%. So we see fewer students in that need of instruction. At the elementary level, there are 9% of kids, middle 25, and then at the high school 34. And so we'll have an opportunity now for levels and expand on the high leverage strategies that are being incorporated to work with students who are in that need of instruction, thinking about how do we provide it for all, but then really support and have fewer students in that need of instruction category. And we're seeing growth from last year to this year. So the work that's being done is impacting our students in a positive way, and we'll hear and highlight some of that work.
So, hi, good evening, board. Good evening, Superintendent Larios. Cheryl and Rossini Barra from Heritage. So some of the things that we're doing at an elementary level, responding to the data, we looked at the DESA scores together and looked at areas of strength and challenge together and looked at the opportunities that we all had, given the resources we had to work together. And these are things that are happening at all of the elementary schools in response. We do have elementary counselors at every building, and the elementary counselors do take the data both from the spring DESA assessment and from the fall DESA assessment. And that helps to identify students who are in need. And so there's a small group intervention with counselors with students in the needs category. Those can be as small as 1 or 2 kids, could be 5 kids, depending on the grade level and the area of need. We also identified as an elementary team that we had a common opportunity for growth in the area of self-management for students. And so as a team, we looked into places in the Harmony curriculum, which is the district adopted curriculum for social and emotional learning, tier 1 strategies within the curriculum that we could share with our staff to make sure that all staff who are engaged in social emotional learning lessons could help students to increase their ability to engage in self-management. One of the things that we've also done is we all have daily social emotional learning instruction using that curriculum, and it is focused on those CASEL standards, which are essentially the first 5 bullets within the Devereaux skills assessment. We also have school social workers, and those social workers do provide individual support for some students in the needs category. And also we have behavior specialists we share at every elementary, and those behavior specialists can also provide tier 2 and tier 3 support for students in the needs category when it impacts their behavior. Thank you. Calming corners and sensory and wellness rooms. We do have in every building, we have spaces within the classroom as well as spaces outside of the classroom where kids can learn those self-regulation skills. That might be called a peace corner, it might be called a calming corner, but it's a space where students can pull aside, take a minute, take a breath, regroup, and then re-engage in the learning. We also have wellness rooms where that space is away from the classroom, where they can engage in those same strategies, where they can practice the strategies of self-management, they can learn them, and then they can carry them back into class.
I think elementary, we'll hear a little bit from the middle school, and there would be some similar concepts being brought forward at all levels as you hear about what the work is, what the work looks like and sounds like.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent Larios. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm going to present for the middle school. We do a lot of the same stuff that they do at the elementary level, at a different level, obviously. I love my kiddos, but here we go. So DESA, because we do have our students also completed DESA, and we have also staff completed DESA, we can see that the results are a little bit different. A lot of the students, we can tell that their self-esteem is different, or what we see is different from what they see. So for us, it's a lot of trying to, I always tell them, I wish you could see what I see in you. And I think that goes for everything, every day. But we are focusing on creating advisory classes that with the Oregon employability skills. And creating that curriculum is something new for us. So it's something that we are trying out this year. We are really, the first lesson is going to be on resilience. And then we're going to continue that on empathy, self-awareness, and communication. And those are critical skills for middle school students. They need support in all the areas. As you may know, our students, every little thing can become something huge at the middle school. So we do try to address everything. We do, sometimes we don't have the capacity to create the groups for everyone, but we do have our counselors and our behavior, we don't have a behavior specialist, wait, let me go back. Counselors and social workers are gonna be working on creating groups specifically for students. Our counselors are creating one group each, and so is our social worker, and we're gonna be basing that on the data that we are collecting from DESA. For example, our data indicates a significant percentage of students needing support in self-management and social awareness. Shocking, right? But our counselors are going to be creating those groups. We are going to be trying to make sure that there are activities that include how to, they're very impulsive. So how can they control that? How can they manage that? How can they learn the day-to-day and how not to react? Because it comes back to the reaction of the students. So we're gonna be creating that. And so the DESA is gonna help us, like the information that we get from the DESA is gonna help us determine what students are in need of support. We have a high percentage of students, so we're gonna try to be doing that. Our teachers are building connections with the students every day, and this is something that they do in the classrooms. But having small groups, that's something that we're gonna be working on, like targeting those specific students who are in high needs. So we also have the Coming Corner. We have different things that we do day to day to really, just trying to respond to the need at the middle school. It's just, there's a lot of social and emotional need at the middle school. So we're trying to respond to that.
Thank you.
Questions?
We'll do the questions at the end or after each level, so I have an opportunity if we could just. Because there's a lot of similar things being brought forward from elementary to middle and to high. There are some very common overarching strategies that are being deployed around how we look at this data. How do we work with those key stakeholders to make those decisions with our counselors, with those individuals who are going to be the practitioners and the action takers with the data. So, and we'll hear a little bit about that now from the high school, but there's very similar ideas emerging between the levels.
Yes, good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Larios, and guests. I have my full team here with me. The high school is a bit too big for me to have the expertise and everything, but I have the master people who have been really focusing their energy and really excitement into certain areas. Amanda is here with me, and she has been working closely with she keeps really close monitors our DESA results and implementing what the trends that we're noticing into our advisory lessons to make sure that every aspect that is in need for students is addressed. So she's going to talk a little bit about the results and how we're using our DESA and youth truth information to deliver those lessons.
Hi, thank you. So we
Is it on?
All right, I'll use this one, sorry. So we opted to use our students' self-rating scores. So staff had rated students at 5% needing instruction, but we looked at what our student self-rating was, and we noticed that social awareness was the area that was rated pretty high by students as an area of need. So that's something we've focused our advisory lessons on. So social awareness is things like taking perspective, understanding different cultural norms, understanding other people's experiences and what they bring to the table. So those are lessons that we are building into advisory this year. And some of these other areas like self-management, self-awareness, personal responsibility, goal-directed behavior, decision-making, those are all tightly connected to our education plan and profile, which is something that all high school students are required to have by ODE. We're really trying to emphasize, in helping students see, this is my goal for myself after high school. So these are the skills and these are the ways that we're working to get there. Kind of like what Anna was talking about with the organ employability skills. It's another way to kind of monitor students' progress. And that also ties in their credits, how they're working towards graduation and getting the classes that they need to prepare them for beyond high school. So here's the next, there we go. So this is an example. Those are some of our advisory lesson slides, just for context. But some other ways that we're responding to our DESA data are through our MTSS grade level teams and looking at our students who are needing some additional support through instructional core, including not just academics, but also social emotional learning. Having some professional development and resources for staff around community circles, community building activities, structured grouping of students and giving them more opportunities to learn how to engage with each other. And then some of the interventions and supports we have are the newcomer group, peer ambassadors, Link Crew, Key Club. We have a student volunteering program we worked on building up. We have a freshman victory class, and we have ninth grade jumpstart. And again, all of these are with the goal of helping students see themselves as, you know, the high school experience as belonging to them and taking ownership of that place and of that space and seeing themselves grow in the areas that they feel and they've identified are important to them.
Are there any questions before we jump to that next goal? And like, you know, Amanda referenced the MTSS teams, and there's teaming structures that are being utilized at every school, at every level. As you know, we are going to talk about culture next, and as we know that if we're going to impact culture and improve culture, we have to have people at the table, and we're making decisions with the people who are implementing the work. So that's an example of how that work is happening with a teaming structure in place.
This is where I ask questions.
Yeah, this is the
So I'm just thinking, I'm still thinking. So we have elementary and then students move on to middle school and high school. Are the level of concerns similar as students move from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school?
Like, are you talking about with DESA specifically, or?
To what you all presented about?
Okay. Well, I only ask because students don't rate themselves in elementary, and so they do start rating themselves in middle school and through high school, so they might not have identified those needs in elementary.
So the DESA in high school is completed by students?
Yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
So a little bit about the DESA. At every level, the teachers who work with kids complete, you know, some inventory of what they're seeing with kids. And if they're doing the quick screen, they answer maybe 8 questions. And if it flags for like, wow, there might be more we want to dig into here, then there's a bunch more questions that the grown-ups answer. At the middle school and the high school, the students also self-identify. And so they have, so the kids also take DESA in the middle school and the high school. It's not really designed for the little ones to self-rate. So the elementary school data is grown-up data. The middle schools and the high schools have grown-up data and kid data. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's all focused on the same 8 areas, which all line up with the 5 CASEL standards. So we can look to see, for example, you know, you mentioned self-management is something that you talk about at the high school. It's definitely an area of focus at the elementary school as well. And self-management is, for example, once you recognize, hey, this is how I'm feeling, what can I do with it, right? And what can I do with it might look a little different for a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old, but in both cases, kids need to learn, okay, how do I manage those things for myself so that I can navigate the world successfully? So the areas are the same, but it of course looks different depending on the developmental age and stage of the child. Does that help?
Thank you. Other questions?
Right now, you're here to kind of just remember initial data. We're going to build on it. So if you're saying, hey, where's the broken down data? This is just kind of, in my opinion, what I'm hearing is like giving you the groundwork of the programs, and then moving forward, like we'll keep building, right, and getting updates on maybe data broken down by, you know, student population groups, gender, ethnicity. We can talk about that, but what I'm hearing is this is more like an overview, understanding of the work that's being done. So you don't have to answer every single thing or be like, hey, this is missing, but definitely use this as your guidance. And I saw already a lot of board members writing that, so that's great.
I have a question if nobody else has a question to ask.
So I heard about the services provided at all levels. I didn't hear about mental health services. Can you all speak to that?
So at the high school level, we do have two social workers and 6 counselors. And so they're closely working with students. And once they kind of go through their processes as far as like who or protocols as far as who's the best person to support the student, then in the event that they feel like they need additional support that is cannot be provided on site, then we go to outside resources. We do have a list of providers, and but we are also trying to help as many students as we can on site, just because they're people that they see them daily and they have a relationship with students. And so how can we also build that capacity on site? But then once we know that, okay, this is a situation where this student or family can benefit from additional resources, then that's when we go to outside entities.
Thank you.
And at the middle school, how many social workers and counselors are there? Because that's the firecracker age.
So we do have 2 counselors and 1 social worker that we share between the 2 middle schools. So we have 0.5 at each middle school for social workers, but we do have, each middle school has 2 counselors.
And a behavior specialist?
We have 1 in each building. Right now, we don't have 1 at my school, but we are hiring for 1.
Oh, so possibly,
I mean, yes,
okay.
we are supposed to have 1, but yeah. So we have 1 in each, at each middle school, 2 counselors at each middle school. So we have a total of 4 counselors at the middle school level and 1 social worker at the middle school level and 2 behavior specialists across the 2 middle schools. So, and just like Ms. Nach was sharing right now, we do also go through the process of kind of evaluating and assessing the needs of the students, and depending on those needs is how we decide whether or not we need to refer the students out for services. Our counselors are there to do more academic work than anything else. So we do have them do check-ins, check-outs with the students when needed. But when the students need something different, we have to refer them out. Or we have our social worker who can support us with that as well.
So do you work closely with the elementary school that they're integrating from to the middle school? Because like, wouldn't their self-assessment plan follow them?
So we do, actually, between the 3 levels, we do have, we have a meeting at the end of the year to kind of, do, hey, here you go.
Over?
This is your group. Type of things. So the counselors meet, and they meet with, my counselors invite all the elementary counselors to come over to our building, and they have their meeting to kind of go over students who might need a little bit of extra love and support. And so to see the needs and the dynamic of the groups as well. So we do have those meetings. So it's a transition meeting, and we do also have that with the high school as well. So middle schools meet with the high school. Usually it's either the counselors or the administrators who meet in order to say, hey, like, keep an eye on this, or these kids have these needs, or these kids have these different other contracts that they might need, or they're receiving support outside. So whatever that might be, we do try to collaborate to make sure that we are the bridge that is, between all the schools. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ryan, do you have any questions?
No, I think you all brought up some of the things that I had on my mind. It was just that when you went through these presentations, I see that the use of ed assistants and reading specialists and counselors and social workers and behavior specialists. And I guess my question was, do we have a ratio of these specialized teachers to students? And are we seeing when those ratios improve, do we see improved results? And I mean, and how are their district budget aligning to provide these resources to meet these goals. I guess that's, but it's, a lot of that's already been answered. So thank you.
I think we're all set with questions for this section.
So we're moving on to this next goal. This has to do with culture and improving the percentage of students and staff who are reporting a positive school culture by 10% as measured by the Youth Truth. And the data that we're presenting tonight is the data from last year's results. The Youth Truth is currently still open. And so we are still collecting feedback from families, from students, from staff on how they're feeling about this year. And so we are presenting this data, but it is data that is last year's data as we're still collecting this year's data. But our goal is to increase that by 10% for staff and students reporting positive school culture. And so a little bit about the Youth Truth. It is a survey that we utilize through the Willamette ESD. It is a tool that provides questions and then analyzes the responses and produces some results for us. And then it categorizes them. And one of the categories that it uses is culture. And so as we walk through what that data looks like at each level, the questions that are asked for culture differ from level to level. So this first one, these are the student culture questions that are asked. The questions are, do students stay busy in class? Do students behave in class? Do students in your class treat the teacher with respect? So these questions are asked of students, and then there's a composite that we see based on how students respond. Oops, did I? Oh, so the data's there. For the elementary students, it's a 3-point scale. But then staff at the elementary level are asked these questions around what culture is. The school's policies are administered. Well, I won't read them all, but they're there. They're there on the bullets are the elementary culture questions. And so this is already produced for us. It comes through that Youth Truth tool. The questions are asked, and then we get this analysis that's provided for us. And for the elementary, it identifies kids as being reporting a positive school culture if they scored at an average of 2.5 out of that 3-point scale. Say that they have that they're reporting a positive school culture. So at the elementary level, there's our breakdown from the 2022-23 school year to 23-24. And you see that comparison against the other schools in our ESD and then typical Oregon school, because it's a tool that's used heavily in our ESD, but it's also used by other schools in Oregon and actually across the nation. So there's the breakdown of what elementary students are reporting for positive school culture. Our elementary breakdown for staff of what staff are reporting by elementary, and then again the comparison against the ESD schools and then Oregon schools. And we'll hear a little bit about the elementary school and some of the work that's being done with teams to impact, create a more positive school culture for kids and for staff.
So in response to this data, the district's overarching mission, I think during the first quarter, is building a sense of belonging. And that is with staff and students. So for students, some of the things, that you can see that are happening, it's one of the first things that all the buildings decide to do is to build classroom expectations with student voice. So having students, give their input is obviously going to help us with the buy-in of those rules and having their students be heard and be part of their classroom community. The second bullet there talks about strategies and PD that we have done in the classroom. So some of I think all elementary schools at the beginning of the year, they started an activity with teachers where we asked, for teachers' opinions of how they will be, feeling like, they were part of the school and develop a sense of belonging, and also for students. So some of the things that came out of that is, for example, I think some of the schools are doing a lot of, greeting students at the door before they come in. We have done professional developments around, this 5-to-1 positive reinforcement. So instead of, focusing on the negative, feedback, we're giving more positive, than negative. Some of the things that all schools, also do is giving these positive reinforcement tickets that are kind of close to our PBIS, strategies for praising students. We're following the school-wide goals. We have something also called the PBIS roundups, where we review school-wide expectations, 3 times a year. So we start, small in the classroom, and then as every quarter, after we come back from every long break, we go back and we review with, all the students, this data. And we do some of this information. We do some of these goals. We're going to go review expectations, based on the data that we're collecting. So we're seeing like, some problems, that happen in the playground. We are going to focus our PBS roundups, in the playground to make sure the students, like, are able to like understand expectations, in the school, and we also get to, hear from them. Other things that we also are doing too with staff. Oh, and I think there's some examples, I think, in there, initially input from First School about, some of the student classroom expectations, that are done with their voice. For staff, we are sharing some of this SWIS data. A lot of this culture data that you can see in the youth truth is kind of related to procedures in the schools, things related with behavior. So we're doing like, sharing SWIS data with staff, and we have PBIS teams that analyze this data, and they meet, I think at least once a month to go over this data. We, at the beginning, did a lot of training versus telling the staff, what is an office managed behavior versus a classroom managed behavior. So the teachers, know how to proceed, when there is an issue with the referral. And the other thing that is also is helping in schools, build a sense of belonging for staff is the use of committees. And I know this has been a practice that we've been, having in the past, but every building have different types of committees. We have like, like leadership committee, PBIS committee, parent engagement committee. And I believe every building has and Washington, we're calling like a belonging committee, and used to be called a sunshine committee. We'll have something that helps, kind of bring the morale, of the teachers and help them, be more a part of an inclusive, community.
So looking at the,
I have a question on the last slide about the elementary student reporting positive culture. This is strictly on Washington School, but we have 4 different elementaries.
No, it's all for
the data that we're
elementary
seeing
school.
tonight is it's
Yeah.
the all elementary. So what's being shared is like the level. So you're seeing all 4 elementary schools, and what you're seeing next for the middle school is the 2 middle schools. So you're seeing all of it together, not the breakdown of each individual school.
And I think for the student data, as you can see there, like, we are right on par with the average school, in the state. And we have a little work with the staff, that's where we need to improve, our perception data.
And so the middle school, the questions start to change for students. At the elementary level, there were like 3 questions asked, and now it's expanded for the middle school. But our middle school students are asked these questions, and it comes together to create a culture score. And our middle school staff are then asked these questions to produce a staff culture score. And so again, looking backwards from 2022 to 23, and then 23 to 22, 23 to the 23, 24 school year. This is what we saw. We're looking forward to having our current data to present at the next monitoring session, so that we could really look at, see, the impact of what we're doing. Ms. Hanson, you want
I'm just gonna pass out some artifacts that I brought for you guys to see and then collect them back.
to?
If you want me to see, I am gonna talk about these different things that you guys can pass them around. This is my newsletter. You don't need it. And there's my PBIS, cards, and some other things that we use. These ones are two different ones, so if you guys wanna pass them around and just kind of look, I'll be talking about them. And about things that we're doing at the schools. So how are we responding to the data? We are trying to, really work on that sense of belonging when it comes to students, and teachers as well. So we're trying to really make sure, as you guys may know, the perception of the students at the middle school can be one day they can totally love you, and then the next day they have we have this love-hate relationship. And it's just part of, who they are as middle schoolers, and it's something that we try to understand. So we try to make sure, that unfortunately we cannot predict, right, what's gonna happen when we give that survey to them. But there are different things that we're trying to do for them to remember the positive. Because a lot of the times, I don't know about your kids, but I know my kid, when I ask them, how was your day today, they tend to focus on the negative thing. So to shift that mentality from the middle schoolers, it's a challenge. It's a beautiful challenge, but we work on that every day. So one of the things that we are working on is, yes, creating the sense of belonging, including the students in that decision-making, including the staff in the decision-making. Those are some of the things that we heard from our staff last year, was that they wanted to meet as a content and grade level, and they didn't have the time to do so. So we actually gave them some time to meet. So they meet every Tuesday, for example, at Valor, they meet every Tuesday, has content, or they meet has a grade level. So they alternate those days, and then we also have committees on Tuesdays. So 2 days of the month, they meet as a content, and 1 day is as a grade level, and then the other one, we have committees. And I think that's a similar practice that the high school has as well. Also, we are working on really addressing the social emotional needs of the middle schoolers, and that's a fantastic way to put it. I love them. But yeah, they have a lot of social emotional needs. We do have a lot of students who, on a day-to-day, we see them that they're coming crying, things that happen at home, things that happen in the school. They fought with a friend, they broke up with the boyfriend. So anything and everything really comes into that. We are trying to change the perception of the students that school's not bad, that it's a wonderful place to be, and that we're there to learn. We are also doing the PBIS rotations, and those are the little cards that you are receiving there. We have supervision plans. At this point, I did present you the supervision plans for after school, but the idea is that even when we have passing times, all teachers are out there greeting students and saying hi and welcoming students. But we also have them there at the end of the day. We have them there, for anything. And sometimes they come for lunchtime and all of that. So we do have different things that we are creating. I can talk about, we have a leadership club that I'm running after school. We have web leaders that we have a teacher who's running that. We have leadership classes. We have Shemekra mentorship who they're coming over. I think we have about 17 mentors that are coming over. They came today. We have a mariachi class that we created. We have our counselor who's running Danza Folklorico for our students, so he's teaching them how to dance. And then we also have our students from Guatemala saw that, and they wanted to do their own club, and we couldn't say no. His words exactly were like, so they came over, Hansen, and how am I gonna say no? And I was like, oh, here we go. So, but it's a great thing for our students from Guatemala to actually step up and say, hey, I wanna create our own club. So they just needed a person to be there with them. And so our counselor is actually learning how to do the dance, but the students know. So it's more like they're teaching him. And so now they have a club for that. So we are doing a lot of things in order to really create this sense of belonging and speaking the language that the students, are talking to us every day and asking for things that, every day they're like, oh, I want this, and we, as you may know, we are very high on accountability at the middle schools. So we do have our rules, and the students are getting things back. We did have them at the beginning sitting with their groups during lunch. They are now sitting with their friends. All of them, 8th graders, are actually something that they never thought that I was gonna allow is to have them use their cell phone during lunch. They are using it now during 10, 15 minutes, and it's something that they asked at the leadership club that we were running. We're like, how about as a reward, we get this during lunch if we do this and, no referrals, no this. And so they have been getting that, depending on what they're doing. And so they're doing really great. And I think my 8th graders are working really hard. And so are my 7th and 6th graders. They're barely getting to sit with their friends for 6th graders. We're working on it. But, it's a lot of work in progress, but it's a lot of building that, letting them know, hey, you have all these things that are happening that are so great. You can have more, but we also need you to follow those rules that are so important for the school. So finding that balance, it has always been really hard at the middle school, but it's something that we're really working on to make sure that we have. We're sharing the feedback. Students are sharing with us what they like, what they don't like, what they would like to see more and more. And so that's something that we try to work on a day-to-day. I know that the students' perceptions can change from one day to another day. As you can see, we have the positive office referrals on the first page of the newsletter. I include pictures of the students who have received positive office referrals, and those positive office referrals come from the teachers, and they give them out to the students. And then I call home, and so it's always great for the parents to hear the principal calling for something positive. And so I try to add something at the bottom of the comments, something that I know about the student, in order to make that connection with parents, and so that they don't get to hear only the negative stuff. But we are focusing on that and school safety, making sure that we have consistency when it comes to accountability. So I think, all of those things is what we have been working on as a middle school, and like really trying to build that culture of like, we're listening to the teachers and we're finding the balance between the needs of the students, the needs of the teachers, and, how are we gonna make sure that the students are growing to be a decent human being and like making sure that they're ready for high school.
I think, yeah, Ms. Hanson hit that idea on the head about finding that balance, and you're working with the individuals, working with your students to improve student culture, like getting their feedback, getting their input, and working with staff to improve staff culture, working with them to ask those questions, and to create those distributed leadership opportunities for people to be able to be a role, have part in decision making. So our high school students are asked the same questions as the middle school. And then our high school staff are also asked the same questions as the middle school staff.
Yes. And the beautiful thing at the high school level is that they both give you comprehensive answers and usually contradict each other. But also the good thing is that you have to accept that both of them are the realities, and so we have to work. That's their perception, right? That's what it feels like, and so we need to work with both, like the staff perception and the student perception, and to promote that fair and mutually respectful environment, we have to create systems that are running smoothly, as well as including discipline processes that are fair for both, right? And keeping staff informed as far as what we're doing. So we have implemented the following. We have different teaming structures to increase stakeholder participation in decision-making, and that comes from our site council, our staff committees, and student leadership groups. We have listening sessions for staff led by our leadership team to receive staff input as far as like, how is it that they want the communication to be, shared, or how do they want meetings to be led, or what type of changes do they want to see in the school? And so any staff input that would kind of inform our decision-making, that's how those listening sessions have been running. Planning for student roundtables, we have targeted professional development because there has been both perspectives, right? I feel like my behavior is not understood, or the teachers feel like I'm not prepared to handle these behaviors. So we have had targeted professional development in active supervision, de-escalating behaviors, and community building, as well as advisory safety lessons for our students, which usually they're included in our Monday advisory lessons, but we also review those lessons after every break, just to make sure that students, not that they'll forget, but just to remind them of the expectations while they're at school. So those are some of the things that we have done as far as like the team structures. We have done others as far as safety, and Mr. Sin is here to share those ones with us.
Hello, good evening. So how are we responding to our youth troop data around staff perceptions around safety and a positive school environment? One of the big things we've done at the high school campus this year is obviously we've shifted our schedule, and that has allowed for us to do a number of different things. It's decreased transition times, which we knew were a time period that we had more incidents happening. It has allowed us to build out 3 lunches, which is alleviating crowding and allowing for some increased supervision during those lunches. We have a higher staff to student ratio during those times. We've got staff supervision now that's available with the new schedule during the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of classes. So once again, some additional supervision there. And we also have been able to add an additional minute of passing time to our schedule. Another thing that we were able to add to our team is an additional campus monitor. So the goal here really is when we're talking about positive school culture, using safety and people's perceptions of safety as being a real pillar to that, and making sure that people feel safe as kind of one of the pillars to actually building a positive school culture from. I think our last slide here is, this is some of our PBIS data for some of our referral data. And I think that the big takeaway here is to see that when you actually look at our referral data for the high school, regardless of perception, that it actually is quite a bit below the median level for Northwest PBIS's internal data that they collect from schools across the region. So just some interesting data there.
Something else that is not listed, we adopted the no cell phone policy, and that has supported our initiatives greatly as far as like maintaining safe relationships, and all the sharing of content that was happening before, or just distractions in the classroom as well, has decreased tremendously just having that cell phone policy.
All right, so now's an opportunity if there are any questions about our culture data.
Just to specify, can you define content regarding cell phone? Is it like TikTok, or can you be more specific?
For us, a no cell phone policy?
Yeah.
Students are not allowed to have their cell phone. I mean, we do not confiscate cell phones. They can have it with them, but not out in class. And so they're just basically no cell phone until before school or during lunches. And so, or dismissal time, of course. But basically, we communicated with families as far as like, if you have an emergency, if you need to get a hold of your student, just make sure you communicate with us. Students, sometimes, they check their phones here and there, but with the exception of lunches or before school, they're not allowed to have their cell phones.
Okay, because when I hear content, because the content I'm familiar with is
Oh,
like
content, it's
fights.
okay. Yes, the fights that they were recording. So right now, like we don't have, like if we have an incident, we don't have anyone recording and posting it. And it was just also sending this message that there was a lot happening at the high school, and there wasn't, but just they were airdropping any small interaction that it looked like it just it looked like it was a lot bigger than it was, but there was a lot more happening. And so all that sharing of content, either for small incidents or big incidents, or going to the restroom and recording something and sharing it, that's completely like, has been minimized greatly. So that's the content I was referring to.
Okay. Or in the event that there were 2 students who maybe weren't getting along, and they would say, hey, meet me at this location, that might disseminate all throughout students. And there was really nothing going on at all.
Or
And
there
that
was also
a
some,
huge distraction.
yeah, something that happened that it was just continued through social media, and there was a follow-up to it, you know, other people involved, just because the whole instigating through, yeah. So it's definitely made a huge difference, yeah. Even like anything that's happening is like, they know they're not supposed to even have their cell phones out, so there's no recording. But it has taken a lot of teaching and a lot of also conversations with parents, understanding like why that is a safety issue, and why is something that we're trying to teach students as far as the appropriate use of your device. But it's, I mean, it has been completely worth it.
A clarifying question for elementary and middle schools. So for example, Mr. Bellinger, you're presenting for all elementary schools. But what you're sharing of what's happening, does that mean that it's happening at every other elementary?
Yes, all the information that I'm sharing is happening at all four, not just Washington's. We all got together and started talking about what strategies we're doing within the buildings. I mean, there's some, different things that we're doing in building, but those that we're sharing with you are all, it should be common practices, and
And so is that the same for middle school too? Like what's happening at Valor? Are those same?
So not everything is happening, like the danza folklorico or the Guatemalan or the mariachi class are things that are not happening. Everything else is happening at the middle school level. They are also having, I don't know the number of mentors that they're having, but for Chemekra, but I know that they're having it. I know we also both got the opportunity, I forgot the gaming club that we have. And so we are all trying to establish those common practices at the middle school level. And that is just best for the students. I know that sometimes the students decide, hey, I want to go to the other school or I move. And if they move, we want to make sure that they have that level of consistency between like the two middle schools.
Yeah, so there's work being done for sure to align ourselves, but not to the point where we're limiting that local decision making at the building level. So there's going to be some nuances that are different between building to building, as site teams are working, leadership teams are working to make some decisions. So there's a lot of alignment, but will be nuances with some of the work happening from building to building.
Yeah, along those lines, I'd like to add that Woodburn High School and Success High School have been also sharing practices. We kind of align our schedules. We're sharing some students. And so we have been working closely together to make sure also students know that it's not Success High School is not a push-out model. It's not a school that we're sending you there because we don't want you. It's that we want to give you the support you need right now. And so how can this is the way that we can do that. And so in order to share students or make sure we welcome them back once they have received that support, we have along our schedules. We do our professional development together. We have all the committees that we have at the high school, they do have it on site as well. And so those are shared practices, and really excited about it. Just also for the opportunity that students have to receive the intense support at Success High School, and at the same time coming to the main campus for electives or anything like that. So we have been able to have those hybrid schedules for them.
Thank you.
I think as middle schools goes, we are different. Obviously, we have the newcomer program, we have the Russian program. So based on those, students, we also have to adapt and create different things for our student and strategies. So we might bring things a little bit different, but I think we do try our best to align when it comes to practices. And so I think that comes back to our data is going to be different. It's not the same all the time, but it is pretty similar. So I think when it comes to that, when it comes to that big or that main practice, we're going to try to implement it as a middle school level. And then we're going to try different strategies based on the culture of the school and what's happening in the school on a day-to-day, which might be completely different from day to day at each middle school. Thank you.
And I got a question, just like Principal Nash was able to explain with the cell phone policy, this, and this has happened, you've been able to notice the difference. With the safety, with the implementations that you discussed, the decreased transition times, the 3 lunches, have you been able to notice a difference in regards to situations, incidences, and interaction between students? Under high school culture plan, sorry.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say yes. Just the mere fact that we have fewer transition periods every single day. It has been a big help in decreasing some of those hallway interactions that occur. So we've also really upped the amount of supervision we do in bathrooms, which was another place that we knew we had a higher level of incidents. And I would say that increased supervision has helped.
Yeah, you can tell by the numbers on our referrals, and hopefully, as we move forward with these presentations, we can share a lot more of the data. But I think also, more than anything, it has maximized instructional time. So students are in classrooms for 90 minutes, and so they don't have those interruptions like, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then there's another transition, and then it takes you 5, 7 minutes for us to push you in, and then for you to ask to go to the restroom and all of that. So along, having those 90 minutes, it's maximizing instructional time along with the 10-10 rule. And so that has been, I think, the greatest benefits by minimizing transitions, just the amount of actual instructional time that students have or teachers have to work with students.
So the high school had all these safety changes and stuff. But what about the middle school? Have they increased like the hallway monitors or campus monitors and staff supervision in between classes?
Yeah, so I can tell you that all my teachers are out for supervision for passing period all the time. They're out and they need to, we try to make sure that it's a positive interaction between students and teachers. So they greet our students, even if they're not coming into their class. The idea is to know the students and really be aware of who the students are. I think for us, having a different plan when it comes to supervision, we had a few incidents last year that really affected and impacted the perception of the students when it came to safety and for parents too. So I think we did actually created a different plan and came up with like, how are we gonna make sure that the students feel safe and feel supported and feel welcome in the schools? So with that came the idea of having teachers be out and be present and, try to get the students all the time. So we also have our assistants who help, and we have 2 campus supervisors at Valor who are supporting, and they are part of the community as well. So it's not like, oh, they only do that. They know the students, they have relationship with the students, so they help in so many other things, and I'm very appreciative of them for everything they do. But I also think, the most important thing that I can tell you that has worked for us in decreasing fights, and I do say that we don't have that many fights, is just having those relationships with the staff and having those relationships with the teachers. Being present has administrators also help. I know a lot of my students, I feel like I kind of know them all, and they feel that they can come forward and ask for help. I think they know I'm strict, but I'm also gonna be there to support them and really guide them. And so all of those, just being active, having active supervision and training the staff has really helped in shifting that, what is happening. We do not allow cell phones as well, so it's a privilege to have them during lunch. It's not something that I allow. I think that's why the kids were so surprised when I told them, okay, Friday, you guys may, if this happens. And they did, they made it happen. And so I think it's a good way to reward them with something positive that they like to do. We did establish some ground rules about not taking pictures of other students and making sure that they, they can share their phone and show people, but it has to be something within, the school appropriate. And so I think, yeah, we have changed a lot of things just because we do want the teachers to be present and they know the students. And I think it has helped in shifting that, just to feel more safe. And I do appreciate the work that the teachers do day to day because they're able to notice little things. I saw these kids and they were coming all together. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go get them. And yeah, sure enough, they had like a little, not fight, but they were arguing. And so we go pick them up and then we give them the opportunity to have a mediation or have a restorative circle or something. It depends on the group, but we do try to make sure that we are aware of those little interactions that are so important at the middle school level. Anything from she's matching my shirt to she's copying me all the time to she's told my boyfriend are so important for them, and we want to make sure that we address them.
Thank you for all those examples of how data is being analyzed together with educators to make some data-driven decisions and change the relational experience for each student, like to create a more positive relational experience so that they're, coming away from whatever they are in dealing with at school in a more positive lens and working to change that perception. Our next goal is related to attendance. And this is a goal that we really spent a lot of time with at the last board meeting. And we heard from Director Poole about the work that's being done as a district-wide to align our approach to supporting attendance to reach this goal of 59% regular attenders for this school year. Looking at our current data versus where we were last year, we see growth at all of our levels, and we are on track. We are meeting that 59% growth rate right now. We just need there's work to do. We know that if our kids aren't in school on a regular basis, our ability to be able to impact and reach all these other goals are greatly hampered. We need students to be in the building, in our spaces, with our educators, with our administrators, to reach these other goals. So attendance is a big importance for us, but we are making progress and improving our regular attenders.
Okay, so at the elementary level, how we're responding to the data. First of all, we're going back to that other slide and we're celebrating because at the elementary level, at the end of the year, it was 60.1% regular attenders, and right now we're sitting at 77. That's a huge jump. Now we'll see how it plays out for the rest of the year, but this is the percent of students who are attending school at least 9 days out of 10. And we all know that for regular attenders, that has a tremendous impact on students' social and emotional well-being, their academic performance. I mean, let's get back all the way back to that first slide about being able to read on grade level at 3rd grade. We had a student who was chronically absent in 4th grade last year. We were trying to help him out with reading. He was reading at the end of a kindergarten level, and he started coming to school regularly last year. And by the end of 4th grade, he was reading at a beginning of 4th grade level in the course of 1 year, just because he was at school. Now, I'm sure every elementary school has stories like that. We know that one of the most important things that we can do is have kids show up. So at the elementary level, we have much to celebrate with the improvement of our regular attenders so far, and we have more that we're going to be doing. So again, getting into the notion of why the attendance goal is in the area that it's in, it's about those social and emotional relationships, and having kids take ownership of that is recognizing the importance for kids at all levels of the relationship building and the sense of belonging. We, at the elementary level, were intentional about talking about those first 60 days of school and what are we doing to create that culture of belonging so that teachers are greeting students at the door or at wherever they're picking them up, depending on the school, greeting them face to face with a smile, by name, with positive interactions, making sure that they're making those connections with kids. I know that you've heard more about the district attendance team. We all have building attendance teams at the elementary level. We also have a district attendance team. All of those teams meet regularly. They review data. They share strategies. They look to see if there are patterns. They look to see for kids who maybe were chronically absent last year, who are now regularly attending, what were the interventions that happened that worked? What happened at an individual level? What happened at a group level? So everybody's looking at those strategies. All of us are also consulting with the Willamette ESD and partnering with experts who are helping us. We all work together as an elementary team on what are the tier 1 strategies we all want to implement? Some of them are listed here to build on that sense of belonging and also to focus on the areas we need to focus on. For example, I'm sure everybody in here could tell you that kindergarten students are the ones who are probably the most likely to be chronically absent at the elementary level. And at the elementary level, that is as much a grown-up issue as it is a kid issue, because when a 5-year-old is chronically absent, a lot of times it has to do with those connections to parents, which I'll talk about in a bit. The other thing that we all have at the elementary level is we have a variety of ways to build awareness and recognition for kids at the individual level, at the classroom level. Everybody's got some kind of incentive. You might have assemblies, you might have prizes, you might have certificates, but just positive recognition of kids who are regularly attending. We also have kind of a tiered response to data in those building attendance teams. So you might have one kind of an approach for kids who are just slipping a little below the bar, a little below 90%. Then maybe kids who are missing a lot. Those are more likely to get home visits and other kinds of strategies. Everybody's got those tiered approaches. And of course, as I mentioned, at the elementary level in particular, attendance is a grown-up issue as much as it is a kid issue, and it's a family issue as much as it is a kid issue. And so we really want to partner with parents and families around, first of all, just understanding the importance of attendance. I know that many moons ago, kindergarten wasn't even a mandatory, and first grade wasn't mandatory for kids to come to school. And so some parent attitudes and understanding of the importance of attendance might just be an awareness issue. They might not be aware of how many days their child is actually missing and how much school they're actually not getting and how that impacts them. So some of that is just awareness. And then, of course, we're also talking to parents. I've seen in all my colleagues in all on our newsletters, we have individual letters that go home to kids. And as I mentioned, we have home visits. So we have kind of a multi-tiered approach with families as well.
And again, you're going to hear lots of commonalities between the levels.
So just like the elementaries, we also have our attendance team. And we have different members in that team, counselors included, homeschool contact. We have one of our secretaries. We have, and we invite different people when needed as well. If we decide that we need to invite a teacher or invite a different member, then we definitely do that. But we do have different things that we're doing. We also divide students into different tiers based on the concerns that we have. If it's tardies, if it's absences, all of that at the middle school is a little bit different, as you may know. We also have the students who we also look into is someone trying to skip class? How late have they been? So we try to really analyze the data based on what we are receiving and based on how teachers are taking attendance. So it goes back also to that accountability piece with the teachers to make sure that, one, they're taking attendance, and two, we check in with the students, hey, you were marked absent in this specific period, what's going on? So, just creating those, again, having that accountability piece, but also support for the students who might not be coming. So we have different things. We have specific attendance plans that we create. Admin meets with parents, depending on the level of concern that we might have. If we have students who are not coming in, we try to meet with them. We have also, when we are not able to contact the parents, and if needed, we definitely contact DHS because we don't know where the students are. And it's another level of concern for us. It's like, where are you? Where are the students? Like, how come we haven't seen them in so long? So we try to really communicate with the parents and do those home visits, and they come either from the counselors, homeschool contacts, or from admin as well. We also have created reward systems, just like the elementary have. It's a little bit different for us because maybe they might not like the pencil anymore. So, or the sticker. So we have different things that they like. So we do raffles just because we do feel like that's more effective. One of the things that they always ask me is, can you buy me McDonald's? And I'm like, that comes from my husband's budget, not from the school budget, because it's different. So it's hard. But we try to really support the students in what they want. And for a lot of the students, that's like a treat. Like, they never get to have those little things, and it's really important for them to have it. So a lot of the times, believe it or not, some of them will come and be like, hey, can we have lunch together? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's have lunch. And like, I know they want food, it's okay. But, I'm happy to have lunch with them. If that's something that is gonna motivate them to be in school, then that's good. I have a student who I have on a plan that if he comes to school every day, on time, then we will have lunch on Fridays. It has only happened twice, but it has happened. So, after we started, and so that's something that we're working on, but we also have the accountability piece, which is detention, after school detention, and Saturday school, and that is really depending on their tardies, number of tardies, or anything like that. So, the way that we use Saturday school, we actually talk to the parents about, hey, we want to make sure that they are here because they have missed so much time in school. So we want to make sure that they get caught up at least academically. It won't impact my attendance percentage, but at least, knowing that they're learning and receiving the information that they need so that they're ready and hopefully they can start on Monday fresh it's important for us. So we are creating that tier 2 phone calls, attendance letters, we're sending them. We are making sure that we're having those meetings. We are, also for our tier 1 is creating that sense of belonging and having the teachers connect with the students. More specifically, first period, obviously not all the students get to have the first period that they want. Everybody hates PE, first period. My girls hate PE. I totally get it. They don't want to be sweating, but having those things and creating those really important things for them. They love the positive office referrals. Some of the kids have told me, if I do this, can I get a positive office referral from you? And I see the value on them. I really love that, that they appreciate that and having them. We are actually, this year, we changed it a little bit and we're calling them during lunchtime. So every student gets to see them, that they are receiving that, and they receive also like a popsicle or a ice cream sandwich, which is not a lot, but for them, it's a lot to get that, at the school. And so they love those things. So I think, just trying to connect to what they like and to make sure that they're coming and being there and being present and having that positive connection with one adult is really important. So we're trying to make those connections happen.
High school level stickers and pencils don't work. But, sorry. But we are responding to data in a different way. So for us, is we have noticed that it's all about relationships, and it's all about like how really getting to know who our students are and learning why they're absent. We have had responded in many, some different ways, like creating some freshman victory classes for our coordinator is tracking their attendance and really getting to know students and finding out the why. We have also individual senior meetings with families, and we have sent attendance checks during advisory classes. We have empathy interviews, especially with subgroups, students with chronic absenteeism, migrant students, newcomers. But then, like Mr. Larios just mentioned, it's really getting to dig into that data and break it down and find out like who are our kids. Because sometimes if you notice by grade level, you can see our seniors have the lowest attendance. And why is that happening? Is work getting on the way? Is it family responsibilities? So Ms. Dixon here is going to share a little bit of the attendance breakdown and some of the interventions that we have done.
So as a level, I think you saw on the first slide, we're running right around 52% regular attenders, which is a pretty big drop. And so the first step in any kind of, action plan that we're doing at the high school is to really try to break it down and look at, are there particular subgroups that have needs? I think also just looking even within that 48% who are not regular attenders, we have 7.5% of those kids have already missed their days for the whole year. At this point, they have missed enough days that they are going to be chronically absent for the year. There's another 7.5% who are within 1 to 5 days. On the flip side of that, within those chronically absent students, we also have 15.5% of kids who, if they had just come 2 more days for the first quarter, would have been regular attenders. And so I think it's really looking at you have kind of these tiers within your chronically absent students to say, who are the kids that we just need to get there 2 more days? You know, how can we incentivize that? Who are the kids who have probably some pretty significant needs and things going on outside of school that they're missing that much school? And then the 18% in the middle of that chronically absent group who we need to find some interventions for. And I think that's where you'll see different tiers of what we're doing. If you really look within the groups, you know, we have some groups that are falling above and below that 52%. Not dramatically different though, but you will begin to see some of the areas where we're targeting in. So I think if we can go to that next slide. And again, whenever we have a plan, I won't go through all the detailed, you know, pieces there, but we did want you guys to see some of the youth truth data that we've used that have driven these decisions about why we're doing them. So a lot of it's addressing those underlying conditions. There's been a lot of professional development around that relationship building with students for exactly those reasons. And again, seeing some of that growth within the youth truth from staff about the usefulness of things. We've had some really great PD. I'll give Ricardo and Amanda especially have done some great things around PBIS strategies that really work at high school, relationship building strategies, those empathy interviews, partnering with the ESD and really trying to teach students in a really different way about why that attendance is important and how staff play a role in that. Oh, I just did click the next button, but I'm not controlling it. So the other data that we really saw is we're trying to figure out at that individual and family level, there is awareness. You know, we're communicating with families, we're checking in, making families aware, sending out postcards. But we also see from our youth truth that a lot of our students and families have some barriers that are impacted. And this is student reported. Almost half of kids are saying they're feeling stress, depression, and anxiety. One of the biggest ones, and I think we had seen it anecdotally, the impact of jobs, but 17% of kids said that their job outside of school is impacting them. And a full 1/3 of all seniors are saying that. So 1 out of 3 seniors are saying my job outside of school is impacting me. In addition, if you look at the kids who said they have seriously considered dropping out, 40% of those kids, it was because of work responsibilities outside. And so it's kind of a heavy lift because it's an outside of school factor. So how do we address that inside the school to work on attendance with those students?
Yeah. And responding to that data as well, we are creating increasing the number of CTE pathways that we have just to try and increase that engagement. It's not necessarily attendance related, but we're knowing that if we have students engaged, then probably they'll want to follow a career, a technical career with it instead of just, you know, having to go to work, or maybe they'll find something that they'll like and we'll keep them a little bit longer. But it's that as well, creating leadership classes, just different ways to increase that engagement.
And I think it's that developing that sense of purpose for school learning in the future. Like, how do we make school feel as important as that job outside? And again, there's some youth truth data about how students feel about whether school is really related to their life outside of work. You know, what do they feel is the connection between what they're learning in school and their future? So by increasing the CTE programs, the elective classes, trying to develop both as in terms of relationship, in terms of students finding their purpose and what they're good at school, and then also seeing it as related to their future. We hope that they begin to weigh that as much as they are their jobs outside of school and responsibilities.
And we also have different committees looking at students' attendance. So we have our attendance committee, and then we do have our MPSS by grade level. So depending on the student needs and the attendance percentage, we have different committees looking at them more engagingly.
And then I think we have to have one more, which is that building that sense of community among students and their sense of belonging. And that was really an area that the youth truth data really brought out that, you know, more than half of kids say the other students in school are friendly, but less than a third really feel like they're part of the community. So I think that trying to build those relationships in so that students have people that they know are looking for them every day at school, both among their peers and among the staff. They know that someone is paying attention when they're not there. And so I think the leadership classes, there's also been a lot of effort to do some student voice committees to hear their perspectives on school. Again, just trying to make school feel like an important piece of their, as important a piece of their life as some of the other social and job related responsibilities. I think we did see, we've also, there's been a big emphasis on our newcomer students, but if you look at like our mom speakers, that's a large growing group at the high school. That's a group that is currently, their attendance rates are quite a bit lower. So trying to build those connections and have some extra supports built in for that group as well.
So lots of really promising practices being put into place in our buildings, and we're seeing that outcome, growth in attendance. And we're confident that it'll continue to put these team structures into place around monitoring attendance and taking action on attendance, looking critically at the data, that will continue to see that positive growth happen. That's if it's any questions around our attendance data.
I'm sorry, did you say, I still processing what I heard. Did you say mom speakers?
Yes.
Okay, can you, that's the first I've heard of that, honestly. Okay, all right.
The number of students who have mom as a primary language at the high school is actually approaching the number of students who have Russian as a primary language at the high school level. So it's definitely a growing demographic in the community.
And that's accurate of all levels as a district.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Then I guess our final goal that we're looking at tonight is our implementation of PBIS using the tiered fidelity inventory. And the tiered fidelity inventory monitors the school-wide implementation of PBIS, which is our framework for creating that positive, the safe, respectful environment in our school, safe, respectful, responsible environments in our schools, and creating that impact on culture and sense of safety and sense of belonging. And really all those things are under this framework of PBIS. So we want to ensure that we are implementing it at a high degree of fidelity so that we are getting the return on the investment in there. So the tiered fidelity inventory measures the components of PBIS implementation. And there are 15 areas that are scored. And our goal is to have all schools at a level 2, which is that mean that we are meeting the implementation level and in each of these categories by the end of the year. This is our last spring data. When the inventory was last completed, our schools have completed some fall inventories to set some decision-making, set some team decisions and to put them into place. But this is our data from the end last year. So there are some areas of growth for us as we want to move to all schools to be at a level 2 by the end of this year. So meaning having full implementation of PBIS at a high degree.
So Mr. Larios said the TF5 is a school-wide framework for PBIS practices. So I think a lot of those 15 different components are going to be something intertwined about what we're already kind of been doing. So it's like it's a big umbrella that encompasses a lot of the things that we're doing related to attendance, expectation, behavior, safety. So for the elementary level, I mean, this is a big one because there's every one of those 15 is like a different goal in itself. And what I'm going to do is probably present on the 3 that 3 out of the 4 elementary schools are doing well, and I have 3, that we probably need to do some work. So that 1.5 is defining the problem behaviors, and that is something that I already mentioned, that at the beginning of the year, all the elementary schools do a training with staff, identifying which one is a major, a minor, and how we handle each one of those individual, situations. And then also, having students learn about school-wide expectations and some of the consequences. 1.4 is about teaching those expectations. So it has to do with, that 5-to-1 positives, that we're doing, some corrections, giving information to the families, and making sure that students, again, really know those expectations, again, connecting, school-wide with the classroom. And finally, at 1.12, continuous opportunities to use data. That it has to do with our PBIS committees that every school, has. They meet at least once a month, sometimes, twice a week. They look at behavior data, and they address it, in our PBIS, rounds up, and they discuss, different types of interventions that we do around behavior. So the goal is for all schools to have a 2. I think a lot of the schools, have a 1, and I don't think any elementary schools have a 0 in any of the. So sometimes, between a 1 and a 2, it's just that small, tweak. So for example, that first, 1.1 indicator, it has to do with the members of the PBIS committee that every school needs to have. So I think we, one of the 4 schools, elementary schools, it's at a 2. The other ones are at a 1 because we need to have a parent in that committee. So we have representation from any other, level of, at the school level, from classified and licensed, but we're missing a parent. So that is just, the only thing we got to do to bring that score, to a 2. The other one that we also need to work on is this semester expectation, research, which is a 1.8. And that is using a school-wide expectations consistently as a framework for classroom expectations. So every elementary schools have a different set of school-wide expectations. At Washington, we have being safe, responsible, and respectful. I think over at Nelly, they have, is it Roar? Roar, and then Lincoln is Swim. Swim. So.
Yeah, we have safe, respectful.
Okay, so it would be making sure that the teachers are consistent in using those school-wide expectations, to build classroom expectations, with student voice. And then the other one that we need to work on is 1.10, which has to do with, data reviews and getting people's, feedback and how so we actually currently are doing that, but to get it 2, we got to do it 4 times a year. And right now we're doing it 3 times a year. After every quarter, we come back and review it and look at the data. So that is a small, change we're gonna do to bring that score, to a 2. I think the other thing is 1.15, which it has to do with conducting an end of the year TF5 evaluation of our PBIS framework. And I think we're going to work with a consultant, Jessica, I guess, from Northwest PBIS, to probably come up with a plan and how we can do an end of the year assessment for our framework.
Me again. Hi. Okay, so we, as the middle school level, we did, this is combined both schools, and we did come to realize that we are not doing as great as we thought we were, but we can only grow from there. So we are working on team composition, discipline policies and procedures, and so we are creating those policies and procedures and trying to align and creating and inviting members. We do have a parent now that is attending our meetings. So we are trying to invite different people who can be part of the team and include, and then we got different ideas from the PBIS at the district level last time, so that's something that we can incorporate. We are having professional development this year. Actually, our teachers were the ones who created those wonderful cards for PBIS to have expectations. Every single staff member have them. And not only do they have them, but we also share them with our substitutes when they come over. So we have them visual, and so we can remind our students about the expectations. So those are little things that we have done, but the teachers are actually taking the lead in a lot of these things because we are working together to make sure that we're all on in the same page. We are creating that alignment in the classrooms to make sure that the expectations are the same. And the one thing that we have agreed is that, you know, at points we might not agree with what the rules might be. I remember when I implemented the cell phone policy, not everybody was on board, but we did come to an agreement of like, well, the majority is on board, so we are gonna implement it, and everybody's gonna be, you know, held accountable to make sure that the students are following this rule. So we might not agree with everything that we're doing, but we have to come to that agreement that we are all doing this together. So I think that's one of the things that we have been trying to really work on, like alignment and supporting each other and making sure that we're on the same page. So the annual evaluation is something that I don't think we have been doing. And so that's something, those are some things that we're gonna be working on. And we have already started. I know that we started scoring ourselves with our team. We have a PBIS team and we meet on a weekly basis. And the reason why is because we know that it's so important to make sure that we have those expectations and to make sure that the students know what PBIS is and what is it that we're doing. Because this is day to day, right? This is what we do every day and how we're living our lives at the middle schools. I know, you can only hope they get to hear me for a little while longer. Anyways, so we are working on all these things. I think, you know, team operating procedures, problem behavior definitions, feedback and acknowledgement, and the involvement of the faculty as well. Having that, I'm gonna say that I'm very proud of my 8th graders. My leadership club that I have is fantastic. They are so great and it's so fun to go out with them and just have them be part of that community with us and like just volunteering, but just sharing those ideas and letting me know, hey, like we really don't like this and this is why. It's really important to hear their voice and to know, you know, they are the ones who, the school is for them, right? They belong, they want to feel that sense of belonging, and how we can create that is by listening to them. So I really love having those interactions with the students. I know that most of you guys have seen me in the community. I try to go to every event that I can so that I can see my other students who at the beginning don't want to say hi to me, but then they eventually come over to say hi. And I love seeing them all the time. So I think, you know, having those connections is really important. And so we're trying to get that feedback from them. And that's not something that we have done in the past. So just because we do, you know, we want to make sure that it is on them at the end of the day, is their behavior. This data represents what they do every day. So we want to make sure that they have some input when it comes to that, and having this, like the family's input. I share my newsletter. There's a way for them to contact me. I try to communicate as much as I can, put a lot of effort into those things because I think it is important for the families to have clear and consistent communication. So the discipline data, we review it. We can see how it changes depending on the group of students who we get. We can see the difference in behavior between 8 and 7, and you know, they knew the expectations and what the rules were already. So they were so used to it, and then we had to teach the rules and expectations to those 6th graders who at times were trying to do things that I already knew they weren't doing at the elementary, but you know, we entertained them for a little bit, and then we were really firm. So, you know, making those, we're making decisions based on the data. And so that's one of the things that we're working on, like making sure that everybody has access to the data at the schools as well. So sharing that data is really important. And I don't think that's something that we have been really doing at all times. So, but just making sure that not only that we share the data, but we actually do something with that data. Because I think we have had the data for a long time, but we haven't really created a plan on how to use it. So we are trying to do that. That implementation piece is something that we're gonna be working on and doing that with Fidelity and like how are we gonna follow in the data. And so we're working on all of those things, so. And then, oh, I did the same thing. Next. Areas with the scores too, so those are the things that we're both middle schools are doing. So we are, you know, we're gonna get there. I know that when we did our, plan, it has changed, it has shifted now. We just did it, for this year, but the idea is, like Mr. Lario shared, is to be at that, a score of 2 for each area. So it's a lot of work in progress, but I think the one thing that I can say is that I can say is that we're growing and learning from like what we have been doing in the past or what we have not been doing too. And so we're trying to really create plans that are effective and that we're able to follow and not try to create something that maybe is not gonna work. So.
Thank you. One of the things that we as an administrative team at the high school have really worked on this year is owning our data. And because it's the only way that we're going to be responsive to it. So the TFI has been an area of growth for us, not so much because it has been neglected or we haven't put the effort that is needed. It's because with becoming a comprehensive school, you need to get teacher buy-in and get your consistent school-wide expectation in order for them to be really implemented with fidelity. And not only coming from teachers, but also coming from students, and also making sure that you have student buy-in or student input when creating these expectations. So in our case, we kind of brought a student panel together to help us kind of come up with the expectations that we wanted to implement. Many of them were revised by them, especially about language. They were like, nope, this sounds punitive. It sounds like we're just, we're going to be in trouble for all of this, even the way that the lessons they were presented. And so how can we reflect students' input into our expectations to make sure that if we are reinforcing them is in a way that, we have heard from students and we have heard from staff and it's consistent and we have the understanding and we have been explaining them. So that's why we can say that we are not where we want to be, but we're making a lot of progress. And so for us, it's like, it's our year one of like, implementation with fidelity, but still then we are where we're supposed to be, considering that we have become a comprehensive school just recently. Mr. Marquez leads our PBIS committee, and so he's going to share some information with us.
Good evening, Superintendent Larios and school board members. Thank you for having us here tonight. If you look at this graph, it's just an overview, but before I even look at that graph, I just want to tell you that our job is really to build from that continuity from primary to the middle school and to the high school. And one of the things you might not hear at the high school is that we're a PBIS school. It's work in progress, and often, I think PBIS is primary, PBIS is middle school. And so we're moving beyond that this year. We're saying we are a PBI school. Okay, there's just nothing. We're not gonna have that conversation anymore. We are using the same evaluation tool form that the primary uses and that the middle school uses, and that is shown right here in this graph. In the year and a half that we have gone through PBIS, even though we haven't got complete buy-in from our staff that PBIS is what we do, the strategies have been in there. So now we just need to own the fact that we are a PBIS high school, and what we do is research-based, and we want to look at the data to drive our decisions. And if you look at that, you can just see that there's been growth. Growth in the implementation, and like Mrs. Nash has mentioned, this is not where we want to be, but to show the fact that we're growing, it's the fact that we're doing the right things and moving that dial and getting that implementation. We're having teams, the implementation and the evaluation, and we're looking forward to actually doing that. So if we can go to the next slide, and it just describes some highlights for our high school this year. Is we're continuing that at the PBIS committee and building capacity 9 to 12. It is a 9-12. It's not just with incoming freshmen, and that's the great thing that the kids have seen most of the stuff from the day they started in kinder and as they moved to, the middle school, all the way up to high school. So we have 4 members last year who attended the Northwest PBIS conference, which is a very good conference. It's nationally known, and we have sent people from across the district. I know that fact, and I know the district makes it a point to have members go, and we have staff members returning, 5 new members who have been added. And we really make sure that we are actually focusing on professional development, how to accurately record student incidents. Because if we don't record incidents accurately, we're also looking at data that's not consistent. And so we made it a point to make sure that with our incidents, there's communication that starts from the classroom. And anytime we do have incidents, that it isn't the staff, the staff in the office, the administrators contacting the parents first. It actually comes first and foremost from the classroom teacher. And that was a big focus this year, just about a month ago. And our committee meets monthly. And some of the things that we're looking at continuing to do, again, is the processes that we have established for cell phones. How are we doing? What's our temperature now? We had a good vision what we thought it was going to look like in the fall. How are we doing as well? Better than last year. Monitoring our tardies expectations, and making sure that those are working well, and adjusting. I think it's always about adjusting with the data and what the data tells us. So that's why for us, it's really important that we track all minors and major referrals. So we're doing a better job, I believe, from the previous years to where they're not being recorded. And you saw a little bit of a spike in the previous bar graph that we were presented overall on the referrals. But that's because we're recording them both in our Power School system and also the Swiss system that many of the primaries and the middle schools use. So, and last but not least, we're going to do the TFI this year. We'd like to do it internally. The last one that was done at the high school was with some district members when they were coordinators, and now we're going to look at internally and also continue to see if we can get some external eyes on our site to see if we can calibrate what we see is what folks are seeing that are coming into the high school. So that's really important to us. And last but not least, we respond to any immediate need. And anytime we have a break, we feel like there's a time very similar to what the primaries and the middle school do. Large breaks actually provides a time to reteach. And at the high school, we call them Bulldog and Beyond lessons. And those used to be safety lessons last year, and now we're Bulldog and Beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, so the quality of our implementation is going to predict the quality of our outcomes. And so this inventory is monitoring that, the quality of the implementation of the PBIS framework. And we see, again, this is a common theme emerging around how we're working with teams, how we're working with the PBIS team and allowing them to own this data, to make some decisions, to monitor it and move it forward. So I'm confident that as it continues to develop and evolve, that we will get to that outcome and continue to monitor our progress and make the decisions and the moves necessary to improve the quality of our implementation. Now, is there any questions?
Can we go through this in Spanish again?
Why not?
Try to break the ice.
We can.
That brings us to also all the goals for tonight that we have to present. You know, I know we're presenting again in February, January. February. In February, we're presenting again, and at that point, we'll provide more data on some additional goals, because we'll have some other goals where we have data available, and we'll see some of the comparison between the goals that were presented tonight and where we are then. And so we can monitor that closely, like that growth happening over the course of the year with these goals and with additional goals that have been identified as priorities in February.
I do have one question for Bellinger. And if you can just please be honest, who's the better Bellinger?
I'm the OG, so.
All right.
All right, so I just want to interject real quickly and just also appreciate and all the work that you all are doing. Thank you so much. I know it's a long night. Yeah, I definitely think a round of applause is definitely needed for this team, for all the team, those who are here supporting as well. You know, what I tell boards is that this work, right? I talked about the role of the board is to set the direction. And then tonight you started to kind of dive into how that looks, right? And I know that was a lot of information. And again, this was just some initial data and we're going to continue to build on. What I tell boards as well is that the results aren't going to happen overnight. You weren't going to present everything tonight. That's going to come throughout the years, and the years, you know, what I'm trying to build and help the board is establish a process. Just like you all are establishing practices, the board also is establishing processes. And so hoping that this now will be a yearly thing, just a quarterly thing, right? Instead of having to come and report every month and whatnot. And we're going to continue to have conversations. Again, we're learning, we're growing, but I always, you know, tell the board, it's important when you do these monitoring sessions to, and for the superintendent to bring in those who are doing the work, because the data is great, numbers can be great, but it doesn't tell the full picture. You all know your students. I appreciate it, even just like hearing, you can hear the passion in your voices as well, and all the work you're doing. And they also, the board, you know, they just want to make sure that there's that alignment, right? That's the role of the board, is making sure that there's that alignment with what they have set for their vision. And you all together are working collectively and collaboratively to ensure your students are successful. And that's it. We're all here to just make sure our students are successful. I'm providing resources for the board. The board is asking those questions so that they make sure that the students are ready for success after school as well and in life. So I just want to, again, appreciate your time and kind of explain what the purpose was. And we're going to continue to grow together and learn together. This is not set in stone, but thank you so much. I think I can speak, and I won't speak for the board, but I think this was really valuable information, and looking forward to seeing what's next and what's to come, even in the years, what's to come in terms of results and the data. So thank you so much. And yeah, thank you to the board as well for hiring me to do this work and help you establish or to collaborate with OSBA to do this work, because it is important work. It really is, and there will be impact. And it starts with the leaders and you all as leaders as well, and then leading into our students. All right, any questions from the board?
Like about process, like what?
No, just in general, but if not, I will just kind of wrap us up.
One, thank you for creating these slides and presenting to us. I think when I'm trying to process all of this, and so as I'm thinking out loud, I think about these are all the things that you're all doing and implementing in your schools. But as we kind of move forward, my thought is always like what's working and what's not, right? And what does that process look like? And is that something that we measure? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Because this is what we see that is happening, but then how do we know that it's working? And is that what we will see?
That's the goal, right? To see and be able to identify gaps, opportunities, and challenges, right? And so we started to see a little bit of that. I think it was with absenteeism. One of you, the high school, I believe, broke down by like population groups and certain subgroups. I think more of that is going to be needed so that the board can see the correlation. And we can talk offline as well, the chair and the superintendent, on what the next one looks like. and just kind of continuing to build off of that. Because it is important to see those correlations as well, not just, I think tonight we saw a lot from different grade levels. That next piece is going to be, okay, what students are needing more of those PBIS, are needing more of that social emotional skills. Who are those students, right? Broken down so that you can make sure that those gaps are being addressed.
So a clarifying question, I heard that next time we'll have more goals presented. So are those different goals than this, can you clarify on that?
I would suggest that we build from these. And there is, I think, one goal that just the data wasn't ready, but Juan, if you can, or Superintendent Larios, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, there are some priority goals that were set, and I had to come back and look at what those are, but there were some goals around, like ninth grade on track, graduation rate, and we didn't have that data until, the semester. So we'll be able to see some of the credits being earned by students at the semester to be able to measure and report out on those goals. But there were additional goals that the board set as priority goals in the professional development plan, that we didn't have data to share tonight, but that there would be data available at the next one. And I have to go back and look at what those all are.
But just to confirm, these aren't board goals. These are your goals.
These are the district goals. But I
Right.
think what we want to ensure is, so I think what happened, right? These are the goals. These are the overarching that we just addressed. I don't think this one got addressed tonight. And then the board, you decided which priority objective under those goals to dive deep into. And so that's what we saw tonight was the priority objectives within those overarching big goals. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay.
It will.
Yeah. And I think we might have ran through those slides really fast that I had, but I created the snippet of the monitoring plan so you could see, and I can share those slides.
Any other questions?
Well, it's not really a question, it's just a statement. Again, thank you guys. It's definitely a lot to process. And I know we're getting going, but on a positive note, we talked about sense of belonging and positivity. And, you guys share stories about what you do. And I've been fortunate enough as a community member, as a board member, I've known some of you longer than others. And I could say that, it's great to see how some of these relationships that these fine folk have on the outside. I've seen them interact with these youth, these students, and I could say kudos to those interactions, the relationships, professional relationships, how they do create positivity and to really help these kids grow into that sense of belonging. So I applaud you for that because that's a good step in the right direction to grow, to achieve these goals. And so that's all I got to say, to end on a positive note. So kudos, big hand to you guys for the work that you do on that note. So.
Other thoughts? I do have a question. I don't know if it falls within this, but I'm just thinking about process and how this is a first time for me, but I'm thinking of our admin and the work that they're doing in buildings. And I also think of our district office, and I'm wondering if there's a connection, if that will ever come up as it's, the presentations and how in the next 2 or 3, how do those align? Is that something that is part of this?
No, I would say it's just the staff who are doing or implementing those practices, and then it will be up to Juan to work with his team to figure out who can come to continue to share what that work is. Not to say next time, but sometimes what I have seen is even bringing sometimes maybe the counselors to talk about, like, it really kind of depends, right? I could see those kind of stakeholders, or sometimes when I've done monitoring sessions, depending on what it is, if it's a program, it really varies because every district is different and sizes are different too, but I've had students also sometimes join. Those are the kind of stakeholders that maybe you'll see in rotation, but it will depend on what is getting reported to the board, right? And making sure it aligns with that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Can I
of
say
course.
something? I'd like to maybe share or a plea. Like a lot of the work that we do is informed by district office. Like we have monthly meetings with directors and human resources and teaching and learning, and so kind of overseeing our practices and or support that is needed and all of that, which is it's great, right? Because then we know, are we moving in the right direction? Is there additional support needed? And so we do have our monthly meetings with them to inform the work that we're doing. What I would like to kind of for the board to consider and superintendent is that if we are thinking about bringing more people or staff members on board, especially counselors or any other staff who is in the building during the day, to just be mindful about the timing and to the workload that they have, just because it's really hard for them to be here until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then expect them to be in the building at 7:30 serving students, because rain or shine, they'll show up tomorrow, and we have to be there ready to serve them. And so, one, think about the workload, and two, we're not working in isolation. It's like a lot of work that is still being developed in collaboration with our district directors. And so, because we can't do anything just because we want to, right? And so when we ask ourselves, is this data right? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we not? I mean, there might be some things that we tried and then we say, nope, it's not working. We're going to just go back to the drawing board. And so there's a lot of data collecting, and it's just that science cycle that you're like this, the
Implementation.
cycle of inquiry that you're trying and then saying nope and then dropping it. And so in the meantime, we're involving a lot of people and a lot of stakeholders. And that is like, okay, it didn't work this time with counselors. Do we go to social workers? Do we go? So there isn't anything that we could say, oh, we're here and everything is working because we're doing it ourselves. There's a whole lot of people that it kind of, they're supporting this work. And so my only plea is that if we want them to come and share or get their side of their story, then let's be mindful about the timing, and let's, because they're working really hard, all of them. And so just that would be my only plea.
I think that's great feedback. And I think too, and I will have this conversation afterwards when we plan the next one. It doesn't have to be, to answer your question, Remy, like next time, are we going to hear again about this? If there's nothing to report on, no, you can skip that goal. You want to make sure we build off, and again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in months, so we want to also be cautious of that. And I will have those conversations with, Juan and Noemi, the board chair and superintendent who set those agendas. Yeah. But I think that's great for the board to hear, so I appreciate that. And I'm cognizant of that, and we'll continue to improve the process. Yeah. But tonight was intended to be just some initial data, so that the board can see how progress is being done on these goals. And I think the board did get to hear a lot on how progress is being done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Was
thank
that-
you all.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think my next slide that I was just going to talk to the board is like, after these monitoring sessions, you heard a lot, and we can develop some talking points. It's a long night, so I may just send those off. I can send those offline, and then you can share them. But basically just some talking points that now you can share out to the community. I loved the piece, and I've been saying this to boards as well, is focus on those positive stories, right? So when you're out in the community and you have community members asking you questions, let them know what's happening in the district. And now you can, right? Because you just heard, but we'll have to create some talking points that you all agree will be shared, because you want to make sure the same message is getting shared. So I'll work with you all on that. That was going to be my final step, is just on what are some 2 key talking points that now, based on what you heard, you can share with the community. And Juan, too, what can you do maybe and share on the district website so that parents, community, students can see this wonderful work that's being done? Right.
Yeah, thank you, Janet, and thank you to everybody who was here, because everybody who is in this room is working really hard to accomplish this work. So, kudos to all you, and thank you for all your efforts. And it's a late night for you all too.
Thanks again. Have a good night. Okay. Next item on our agenda is board calendar.
We have our next meetings, November 26th, which is Thanksgiving week, December 17th, December 19th. Agenda number 7, future agenda items. Oh, did I move along too fast?
What, sorry?
Did I move along too fast to the next?
No, that's fine.
No,
No,
no.
that was it. I was
Oh,
done with
okay.
my
Yeah.
section.
Future agenda items.
So don't
And-
we have to implement this community engagement tool for the monitoring plan?
If that's the tool you want to use, yes, we can do that. And we can talk right now whether those 2 talking points that you want to share out to the community.
I was just asking if that's an agenda item for down the line.
Oh, no, it's not an agenda item. That was just a tool that I wanted to share, that after a monitoring session, it's great to then, that's the tool that I had as a sample. But really all it is what are 2 things you heard tonight that you all agree can now be shared out to the community? Yep.
Talking about, we hit on discussions earlier about if it's an email to Juan, and this is a learning part for me. Expanding the CTE program, because at the conference this last weekend, I made networking, communications, talking with one of the session workshop, Jeffrey Crapper from Salem. That guy, he would be a great networking person to expand our CTE with many more opportunities. So I don't know if that would be an agenda item that we would discuss at the board, or is that something that we could just, foreshadowing, just shadowing him, getting involved with him, talking to him about how to go about connecting with Salem, because they have different, more, they have firefighting, they have law enforcement, they even have aviation opportunities in that regard for CTE. And so, to expand even more than what we have, it would be a great, I wouldn't know if I could call it partnership at this point or what we would call it, but just to, kind of collaborate with Salem Kaiser in that regard.
Maybe
That, yeah, they have their own CTE, so, yeah, I don't, what's that?
It's not with Willamette.
It's not what?
It's not with Willamette as our CTEs are with Willamette, right?
We have a number of partnerships that we have in place to provide CTE opportunities for students. The Willamette Career Academy is one of those, and there are 8 CTE programs there that we have students in. And this may be a topic of the focus for the high school presentation and sharing. And we have partnerships with Chemeketa and the Brooks campus, where students are participating in the EMT program there as well. So we have a number of partnerships that exist, and maybe that's our first step, is having the high school present on what are all those different partnerships and CTE pathways, so that we all have clarity on that. We just did a feature on the Willamette Career Academy. It was on social media highlighting some of the different programs and students who are participating in it. But it might be good to get a broad scope of here are all the different pathways that exist.
Okay. So what that would entail, just starting off, what would it be, just a discussion then, and it wouldn't be an agenda item then?
Oh, I guess that's a question for the board. I could provide that to you all and say, here's what they are in in an email format. If you'd like to have a conversation about those, that could be a topic that the high school is on the agenda for, on the calendar for,
What if you were talking about something that had 0 cost? A partnership that didn't have any cost? Because Willamette costs a lot of money, and Brooks cost a lot of money. So Jeffrey Crapper has a lot of different avenues where volunteers kick it in, and the partnerships are grants, 0 monies back to the school districts.
if you'd like to connect me with him, I'd love to sit down and chat with him.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that might be all it is meeting, touring, seeing what he's got. He used to be a volunteer firefighter with the Dayton School District. He was on the school board there. And then he went into Salem Kaiser. He was a teacher there. Now he's an EMT there. He's actually on the
School board, or the Salem Kaiser School Board.
well, yeah, but he's on the, you know.
He's on our OSB.
Yeah, OSB.
He's on the
Yeah,
OSB.
One of the outgoing
yeah,
members.
yeah, that's what I was trying, I was like,
You know, if I can interject real quick, I know I'm done with the monitoring session, but if I can interject, these are kind of those things where if the board is interested in a specific topic, definitely bringing it up to Juan first and then seeing like, hey, maybe we can just learn about it more. Like, is it a need to we just want to dive into, like you said, Juan, maybe I need to do just a quick overview of what it is, and then maybe you can bring Jeff potentially to talk about it, but at a work session and at a standalone work session and figure out when to carve it. I know you all have a lot though, so maybe that is something just like planting the seed, right? Santiago, you're like, hey, I'm just gonna share this right now. It's something that I learned at the conference. And I think that's great. You should be sharing kind of what you heard at conferences. That could be an agenda item where you could say, hey, let's report on what we all learned at the conference so we can all hear it.
Or grants available.
Yeah.
and that's why I said it was a learning process, because I just
It
want to know
is.
what way,
Yeah.
so.
What would be the best approach to maybe learn more about CTE? Because that's something that you think, if it aligns with the vision of the district and whatnot, and you're looking for the success of the students. Yeah, without obviously creating more work, but again, important to keep that in mind. And so it sounds like you're just sharing a resource that you heard at a conference, which I think is great.
Yeah, and if it's not, then, I mean, Santiago could simply email,
Yeah.
so
here's this great resource I learned about. Check it out. Can you check it out?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I'm kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
knowing the difference.
Yes.
I'll go that
Correct.
route.
Yep.
Other agenda items for the future?
As Janet mentioned, how, what we've learned at the conference, convention, during a work session, if we can share
That's-
our.
That's on the
If that's
agenda
on
for the next,
To debrief. All right, then.
along with the Policy 101 webinar debrief. Just as a reminder, putting it out there.
Watch the policy webinar. Okay. Other agenda items? All right.
No, nothing to add.
Did you have an agenda item?
No, nothing to add.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear him.
Thank you. All right. It is now 10:04, and we adjourn this meeting.
All right.
Bye, Ryan. Have a good night.
Yep, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.